السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا بكم في اليوم الثاني من مؤتمر عمارة المساجد في الإسلام. اليوم هي البلانري سيشن. السلام عليكم. اليوم هي البلانري سيشن الأولى للمؤتمر، ومعنا ضيفين كريمين من المملكة العربية السعودية. سوف أقدم المتحدث الأول. المتحدث الأول هو الدكتور صالح الهذلول، أستاذ وناقد في مجال العمارة والعمران، وله اهتمامات في مجالات علوم المعرفة والتغيرات الهيكلية للمجتمعية البشرية ودراسات استشراف المستقبل، وهو مهندس معماري وحاصل على بكالوريوس العمارة من جامعة الملك عبد العزيز، وماجستير في التصميم العمراني من هارفارد، والدكتوراه الفلسفة في العمارة والدراسات البيئية من معهد ماساتشوستس للتقنية MIT، وقد عمل رئيساً لقسم العمارة في جامعة الملك سعود بالرياض، وأيضاً وكيلاً لوزارة الشؤون البلدية والقروية للتخطيط المدن بالرياض بالمملكة العربية السعودية، وكان مسؤولاً عن إدارة وتوجيه التنمية المكانية على مستوى الوطني والإقليمي والمحلي في كافة أرجاء المملكة. وبذلك أقدم لكم الأستاذ الفاضل صالح الهذلول، فليتفضل.
شكرا دكتور محمد، صباحكم الله بالخير. أنا أتحدث لكم عن أو أحاول أن أتحدث عن دور المسجد وعلاقته بالمجتمع وارتباط الناس بمجتمعهم، وسأحاول أن أرسم الصورة من خلال تتبع بناء أو تأسيس بلدة، وبالتالي مع تأسيس البلدة اختيار موقع المسجد، ثم نقلوه من مكان لآخر ثم إلى مكان ثالث إلى أن استقروا على موقع، ثم بعد ذلك عمليات البناء والتوسعات سنمشي عليها. وبعدين أحاول أغطي بسرعة 4 أو 5 وصايا اللي هي أوقاف على المسجد لكي تضمن استدامة واستمرارية صيانة وتشغيل وتمويل المسجد والصرف على العاملين فيه. البلدة هي البدائع بالقصيم، وهي من البلدات الحديثة التي أنشئت مع بداية القرن 14 الهجري. أنا أرجو أن رئيس الجلسة ما يصير ستريكت بالحيل، إن بغيت أزيد شوي، لكن أثق إن شاء الله أنه لي حظوة. بدأ الاستيطان مع بداية القرن 14. لمن يعرف القصيم في وسط أو الوسط الشمالي للمملكة العربية السعودية، وادي الرمة، كانوا السكان في الخبرة والهلالية على شمال الوادي، وكانوا عايشين يمكن 300 سنة قبل كذا. في عام 1300 بدأوا ينتقلون إلى الضفة الجنوبية من الوادي، والسبب كان زيادة يبدو عدد السكان وزيادة وندرة الأراضي الزراعية، والاقتصاد معظمه كان يعتمد على الأراضي الزراعية. أي لا slides I will manage it. شكرا. انتقلوا السكان مع بداية 1300 أو مع بداية 1300 أو قبلها بقليل، بدأوا بحفر قلبان يسمونها آبار، وإنشاء مزارع، الاقتصاد زراعي أساساً. فبدأت عملية الانتقال والاستيطان في حدود تقريبا بين 1300 و 1310. نحن نتحدث بالتاريخ الهجري اللي هو تقريبا 1080 إلى 1880 إلى 1890. بدأت عملية الاستيطان وحفروا وأنشأوا مزارع وكذا. الصلاة هي أول عمود الدين وأول شيء يفكرون فيه، فاختاروا لما قبل أن تقوم البلدة، هي اللي على اليسار الآن، لكن قبل أن تقوم البلدة كانت فقط المزارع، فاختاروا موقع اللي هو رقم 1 وبدأوا يصلون فيه بين يمكن سنة 1300. الأمور ما هي دقيقة لأنه ما عندي وثائق، لكن عندي في عام 1400 هجري قبل 45 سنة لحقت على شيباننا وسمعت منهم الكثير، فأنا أروي عما ما سمعت. فكانوا يصلون، جلسوا لهم يمكن سنة أو وجه سنة يقولون في المنطقة ذيك، يصلون وحاطين أساس ما فيه مبنى، لكن مكان يصلون فيها الجمعة والأعياد. وإذا صارت مطر أو برد أو شمس حارقة مثل نهاية يوليو وأغسطس، يقولون أنهم يصلون في خان هذلول. هالخان صفة كبيرة كانت مخزن للأعلاف وكذا. ثم بعد كذا قامت بقية المزارع. البلد ما بعد أنشئت، اللي حنا نشوف اللي هي على اليسار. لما قامت بقية المزارع قام أحد الأعمام الله يرحمه العم محمد الهذلول وبنى مسجد في الموقع رقم 2، ونبي نشوف البلان حقه. في مرحلة تالية، والمسجد ذا جلس يمكن 4 سنوات أو كذا، ثم بدأ الاستيطان بالمنطقة اللي حول رقم 3، اللي شمال رقم 3. لما بدأ الاستيطان هناك تشاوروا السكان بينهم وقالوا أنه يعني الآن المسجد بعيد، فاتفقوا مع كلهم صاحب اللي ساكين هناك وأصحاب المزارع اللي أنشأوا المسجد أنهم والله يهدمون المسجد هذا وينقلون المبنى للموقع رقم 3. البروسس هذه هي المهمة هنا في التحول في المجتمع واتخاذ القرارات مع بعض. الآن أمر على هذا المسجد اللي بناه محمد الهذلول في نعتقد تقريبا أنه عام 1306، وصلوا فيه يقولون أنهم صلوا فيه بين 3 إلى 4 سنوات الجمعة والأعياد. عبارة عن مرمل واحد يسمونه مرمل الصف، صف الأعمدة الموازي لجدار القبلة يسمى مرمل. وعادة هذا يصير في حدود 3 أمتار، يأخذ له صفين في الغالب. فالرواية تقول أنه 5 أعمدة، مرمل واحد موازي لجدار القبلة. فأنا حاولت أعمل ريكونستراكشن. المبنى هدم عام 1310 وخلوا الموقع مصلى عيد. خلى اللي هو الموقع رقم 2 هو اللي كان فيها المسجد اللي في عام 1310 نقلوه للموقع رقم 3 وبنوا. السبب في هدم المبنى أنه ما كان فيه خشب للتسقيف. الخشب حق المبنى هذا جايبينه من الخبرة، لأن المزارع ما بعد وصلت الأثل، خشب الأثل اللي يستخدم في التسقيف ما وصل لمرحلة يصير قابل أنه يستخدم. فالشاهد أنهم نقلوه لرقم 3. نبي نتبع هنا المسجد اللي بني في رقم 3. أول في عام 1310 بنوا اللي باللون الأصفر اللي هو المقدمة، وأيضا الحسو اللي هو منطقة الميضأة اللي على اليسار، هذه اللي هو بئر ومكان الوضوء. ويبدو من وصية على المسجد، أحد الوصايا أنهم ما أنشئ جميع. يبدو أنه بعد بناء المسجد يمكن ربما بسنة أو شيء أنشئ البئر علشان الوضوء. ثم يقولون أنه تقريبا في حول، يتحدثون يقولون حول سنة الرحمة. سنة الرحمة اللي هي 1337 نعرفها. فحول سنة الرحمة أنشئت الخلوة اللي باللون الأخضر اللي هي القبو. في عام تقريبا ثم في نهاية الأربعينيات 1346 1347 أنشئ مرمل، يقولون أنشئ مرمل زيادة اللي هو باللون البرتقالي. وأيضا أنشأوا منارة. ما كان المسجد له منارة، لكن منارة فوق سطح المسجد. وفي وسط الستينيات الهجرية، ربما يمكن 1362 أو أوائل الستينيات 62 أو كذا، بنوا المرمل الرابع اللي هو باللون السماوي، وبنوا المنارة بشكل منفصل. والمسجد ذا أنا صليت فيه من يمكن من يوم بديت أروح للمسجد، أمسك يد خالي كان كفيف الله يرحمه، فمن يوم بديت عام تقريبا 72 هجري، أنا عمري 5 سنين في ذلك الوقت، كنت أمسك يد خالي وصليت بهالمسجد يمكن 8 سنوات. في عام 1380 هجري 1960 ميلادي هدم المسجد هذا وأعيد بناؤه. ليش هدم؟ يبدو أن سكان البلد ازدادوا وهم بحاجة للتوسعة، لكن وصل لمرحلته الأخيرة، لأنه لو نلاحظ الفراغ اللي بقي بين الخلوة القبو واللون السماوي ما عاد يعطي فرصة. هم زادوا في المسجد إلى أن استحالت عملية التوسع أو الزيادات. فهذا they commissioned استاد بناء معروف اسمه عبد العزيز بن بادي الله يرحمه من عنيزة، وهدموا المسجد هذا ووسعوه وبنوا هذا هو المسجد كما يعني بشكله النهائي إلى أن هدم عام 1380. ثم وهذا مع سطح الخلوة والمصلى، وهذا السكشن النهائي في عام 1380 كيف كان المسجد والخلوة والفراغ اللي بقي بينهم بحيث أنه ما يسمح بالزيادة. ثم في عام 1960 هدم وأعيد بناؤه بالشكل هذا سايت بلان أو صورة جوية للمسجد اللي بني عام 1980 أو 1960 1380. هذا أخذ وضع مختلف عن المسجد السابق. خلوا الخلوة تحت المسجد. أولا توسعوا في المسجد، وسع من الجهة الجنوبية، أضيف له بيوت جنبه وكبروه، وحطوا له أيضا دكاكين بالجهة الشمالية اللي هي تطل على الساحة أو ما يسمى المجلس، وصارت تؤجر وتدر على المسجد. ثم وصار عبارة عن دور البيزمة البدروم اللي هي الخلوة هذه تحت، والمصابيح والمصلى فوقه. المسجد هذا أيضا عام 1400 هجري يبدو أنهم اتخذوا قرار أن المسجد مبني من الطين، وما يعني ما الدنيا أصبحت تحولت للخرسانة، فاتخذوا قرارهم أنهم يبنون المسجد ويعيدون بناؤه. فهذا هو المسجد كما بني عام 1380 وهدم في عام 1420 سنة. هذه المنارة كما بدت حينها، والجدار القبلي للمسجد والجدار الجانبي للمسجد، ثم أيضا منظور آخر. وفي عام 1400 رأوا أنهم يبنون مسجدهم من الخرسانة، وأنهم مع النمو والتقدم وكذا ما يليق أنه يبقى المبنى الطيني مع الأسف، ففقدنا المبنى الطيني وبني بهذه الصفة اللي ترونها. وهذا هو جدار القبلة للمسجد. كيف تم البناء خلال هالفترة كلها؟ كان دائما عملية البناء تتم من الناس، إما أحد الموسرين، ولكن في الغالب أيضا يسهمون معظم الناس. أحد يسهم بقدرته كبنا أو يخلط طين أو يعني يساعد، أو يجيبون طين من الوادي علشان يستخدم في عملية البناء. والقادرين غالبا إذا كان فيه مواد بالذات الخشب والتسقيف يحتاج أنه يشترى إذا لم يتبرع فيه المحسنين من أهل المزارع. فالعملية إلى أن بني هذا المسجد وهي ما فيها تدخل من الخارج، كلها عملية تعاونية وقرارات تتخذ في البلد نفسها. وهذه نقطة يمكن الفارق بين وضعنا الآن ووضعنا في السابق. كيف هالمسجد 130 سنة مشى وعاش؟ عندنا بعض الوثائق اللي هي الوصايا على المسجد. هذه وصية محمد الهذلول اللي بنى المسجد الصغير وبعدين انتقلوا إلى المسجد هذا. بالمناسبة موقع المسجد الصغير خلوه مصلى عيد وصليت أنا فيه إلى عام 1380 أو 84 عندما تركت البدائع وانتقلت للرياض. الوصية لو نلاحظ يقول أنه 60 صاع منصوف، المنصوف يصير جزء منه حب وجزء شعير. على جامعهم 60 صاع أوقف 60 صاع منصوف حب وشعير على جامعهم في البدائع ما عمرت هذلولة. الوصية من مزرعة هذلولة اللي ما هي بعيدة عن لكن مشترط بالوقف أنه إذا تركت سنة ما عمرت ما زرعت فلا شيء عليها، ما يستحق الوقف 60 صاع هذه حتى تزرع. وبعدين جاء لمن هذا الوقف؟ وهو لإمام المسجد ما بقي المسجد. ثم اشترط فإن عدم المسجد ولم يكن في البدائع جامع صرفت تلك 60 40 على مسجد السحابين في الرياض ليست الرياض العارض، الرياض في تاريخ الوثيقة 18 جماد الثاني 1310. الرياض هي رياض الخبرة، كانت المكان اللي انتقلوا منهم وجو للبداية. فهو يقول إذا ما عاد صار فيه مسجد هنا فال60 صاع 40 تروح المسجد الرياض للإمام و20 المسجد اللوات. فهذه يعني واحدة من الوصايا. ثم الوصية الأخرى أيضا مفصلة، هذه وصية شخص اسمه عبيد تسمت باسمها المستوطنة بالأول، كانت تسمى منزلة عبيد وبعدين ومنزلة الحميدي، بعدين صار منازل جميع. يمكن الموضوع ما هو بشيق لكم لكن أنا بالنسبة لي انترستينج ولذلك متابع التفاصيل فيه. لكن في وصية عبيد نلاحظ أنه يقول فيها جزء هو موقفنا الثلث كاملا على المسجد، وهذه الوصية أمامكم. لكن الجزء الأسفل منها يقول أنه جعل في مغل الوقف بعد المعين فيه عمار حسو المسجد، فهو يبي وبجميع ما يحتاج من تصليح البير اللي هو حفره وتصليحه وكذا، والبناء عليه لأنه يحتاج زرانيز ويحتاج محاله ويحتاج دلو، وغرسه أيضا. لاحظ يبي يغرسون له حديقة اللي هي مكان فيه نخل، غرسه حتى يريع نخله إلى أن النخل يبدأ يجيب مردود، وقوام دلوه من الوقف. فالدلو اللي هو يزعبون به يطلعون الماء، القوام من الوقف حتى يصير له مغل اللي هو النخل، حتى يبدأ النخل يجيب مردود يكفي للدلو. فشوف الوصية كيف التفاصيل اللي هم. ثم يقول والذي يفضل من النخل عن الدلو فهو لإمام المسجد، يعني غلة النخل اللي تفضل فهي فهذه تعطينا كيف الناس كانوا أولا مرتبطين بمسجدهم، ثانيا منتبهين للتفاصيل كلها. الوصية الثالثة في موضي الثويني تفاصيل هذه، لكن هي زوجة محمد الهذلول الواقف الأول. يقول أوصت في ثلث مالها يصرف في أعمال البر من جميع الجهات البر على ما يقضي نظر الوكيل، وبعدين راحت تفصل تقول لقريب أو محتاج أو فقير أو طالب علم من كتاب علم، يصرف أيضا على كتب العلم من مصاحف وكتب علم وغيره دون أن كذا مشترطة أن تهان. وأوصت بشجراها، الشجرة نوع من النخيل عندنا، أوصت بشجراها التي في نخل زوجها محمد الخارجة جنوبي البركة، نخلة معينة، وقف على مسجد البدائع وهو مسجد منزلة السلامة، شهد على ذلك فلان وفلان في 9 صفر 21 1321. الوصية الرابعة أيضا شيقة، وصية الجد، جد الوالد الله يرحمه صالح الهذلول. أنا يناظرا الشيرم رئيسنا يناظرنا باقف، باقي لي يمكن دقيقة ونص أو إن أذنت لي دقيقتين. فصالح الهذلول عند وفاته أوصى في ثلث التركة يبنى مسجد بالعبيلة. العبيلة ما هي بعيدة، اللي حنا نتحدث عنها منزلة عبيد بينهن تقريبا 3 كيلو، فهو أوصى في أنه ثلث التركة كلها وقف. بعدين يفصل يبنى مسجد بالعبيلة 5 عمد، حدد أيضا كيف، ويجعل المسجد الأول فيه مسجد قائم، يجعل المسجد الأول خلوة اللي هي قبو أو كذا. كذلك خصص 30 صاع المذكورات البادي منهن السراج. فشوف كيف قاعدين يفكرون بالإنارة للمسجد. البادي الأول يفضل يعني يبدأ بالسراج، وإن بقي شيء الباقي لإمام المسجد. ثم يقول أيضا قادم في ثلث نصيبه من مغيضة، هذه مزرعة بالخبرة التي في رياض الخبرة، 15 صاع 10 بر و5 كذا لسراج مسجد السحابين، هذه مستوطنة أخرى في الشمال. فأيضا ثم التي برياض الخبرة وما بقي من السراج من 15 للإمام. يقول أيضا قادم في ثلث أصيبته من السلطانية، مزرعة أخرى في البدائع قريبة من البدائع العليا، 15 صاع لسراج مسجد الحميدية اللي هي المستوطنة الثالثة، وما بقي من 15 للإمام. ثم يخصص يقول والذي يبقى من ثلث التركة يشترى فيه عقار، وقادم في ريعه 15 صاع على مدرسة العبيلة. المدارس عادة تصير جزء من المسجد، فموصين أنه 15 صاع من هذه الصاع تقريبا 3 كيلو جست علشان يصير عندكم. ثم يقول وإن كان ما فيها مدرسة فعلى مدرسة مسجد محلة السلامة، هذه مكتوبة في عام 42. أنا أبقف هنا، ولكن الشاهد من كلامنا هنا ارتباط الناس بالمسجد. هم أصحاب القرارات في الموقع، هم أصحاب القرارات في البناء، هم أصحاب القرارات، كلهم يتشاورون ويتخذون. ثم الإسهام في تمويل المسجد، الناس يسهمون عند البناء، أما الصيانة والتشغيل في الغالب كلها تعتمد، وأيضا رواتب الإمام والمؤذن وكذا كلها تأتي من الأوقاف. في وضعنا الحالي رفعت اليد عن المساجد، وصارت الدولة حفظها الله هي اللي غالبا تتولى الصرف على المساجد في الغالب، ولذلك الناس انفصلوا شوي. قصص سريعة 2 أو 3 من ما حصل لي في تجربتي في تخطيط المدن. الناس حنا كمخططين نقعد ونقول إنه فيه دائرة 200 متر أو 250 متر ونحط المسجد في المكان. مرة من المرات بالرياض واحد تبرع بقطعة أرض سكنية يبيها تصير مسجد، وجو يبغون يعدلون الاستعمال، واعترضنا حنا في تخطيط المدن. والسبب سبب اعتراضنا هو أنه فيه مسجد أقل تقريبا من باب المسجد هذا لو بني 80 متر مسجد آخر. قلنا لهم يا جماعة هذا مسجد ضرار، ما يجوز تفريق الجماعة. طبعا الناس متحمسين جزاهم الله خير، قالوا أنتم علمانيين وكذا، وراحوا للشيخ ابن باز واتهمونا، وكتب الشيخ ابن باز خطاب اللي الوزير وقتها محمد آل الشيخ، قال لي الدكتور محمد يا دكتور صالح رح للشيخ اشرح له هالأمر. قلت له أنا ما أعرف المشايخ، ما يصلح هذا. فكان الدكتور عبد العزيز الخضيري الله يذكره الخير معالي وزير الثقافة والإعلام فيما بعد، كان هو وكيل مساعد معي، وعبد العزيز عنده الكاريزما وعنده القدرة على، راح للشيخ وصلى معه المغرب وجود ايده وطلع هو وياه للمجلس حقه، وجلس معه الشيخ كفيف بن باز الله يرحمه، وشرح له الوضع وشرح له اعتراضنا. وفي 2 أو 3 حاولوا يشوشون، لكن الله يرحمه الشيخ كان قال لهم اسكتوا إلى أن نسمع، وكانوا يحاولون يعني. ففي الأخير أبدا كتب الشيخ خطاب للوزير أنه خلاص الأمر منتهي واللي ترونه فيه بركة أو كذا. لكن شوف انفصال الناس، يعني حتى حنا اتهمنا في ذممنا في الأمور اللي كذا. أنا بتوقف هنا، ولكن هي الفكرة كلها حول عملية الارتباط وانفصال الناس عن مساجدهم يؤدي إلى أيضا حتى الناحية الروحية قد تضعف في كثير من الأحيان. شكرا لكم.
السلام عليكم مرة أخرى. شكرا للدكتور صالح الهذلول على هذا العرض الشيق لعلاقة المسجد بالبلدة أو المكان والناس يعني المجتمع الذي يعتني بالمسجد ويطوره خلال فترات السنين، يعني تزيد على مئات السنين، والتغير الذي حدث مؤخرا. محاضرنا الثاني هو دكتور علي شعيبي, and for this one, if I may, I'm going to switch to English for a little bit because actually the CV that I received is in English, so we're going to be switching back and forth in Arabic and English, so I apologize about that, but that might be also of an advantage for some of us. Professor Ali Shaibi is a Saudi Arabian architect and planner, is a co-founder of BIA Planners, Architects and Engineers based in Riyadh, with projects in Saudi Arabia, Oman, Yemen, Pakistan, and Djibouti. Mr. Shaibi teaches design at King Saud University and co-editor of the Urban Heritage Encyclopedia. Several of his projects have received national and international awards, including the Kindi Plaza at Hayy Safarat, the diplomatic quarter in Riyadh, which received an Aga Khan Award for Architecture in 1989, and the Architectural Project Award of the Organization of Arab Towns in 1990. With BIA, he is currently at work on the National Museum in Riyadh, the Institute of Public Administration in Jeddah, and the Embassy of Saudi Arabia in Tunis. Mr. Shaibi was member of the 1992 Aga Khan Award for Architecture, Master Jury, and the 1995 Award Steering Committee. With that, I'd like to invite Dr. Ali Shaibi to give his speech, which is titled The Changing Context of Urban Mosques. فليتفضل. حياك الله. تفضل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. صباح الخير. النص موجود باللغة الإنجليزية ولذلك سأتحدث باللغة العربية، فغير المتحدثين باللغة العربية يستطيعون قراءة ما يمكن قراءته. الحقيقة الدكتور صالح يعني شال عني نص الهم، لأنه موضوع اللقاء كان هو عن دور المسجد وتغير المحيط العمراني وتأثيره على دور المسجد. فاللي أنا راح متأكد أنا يعني أيهم اللي يجي قدام. أي اللي أنا سأتعرض له حاجتين، واحدة اللي هي عن تغير في علاقة المسجد بالمحيط العمراني، وكيف تسبب هذا في تغير دور المسجد وضعفه في البيئة العمرانية. وبعد كذا بعض المحاولات التي تمت خلال السنوات اللي فاتت، وغالبها من تجارب أعرفها أنا يعني شخصياً، لأني ما استطعت أني أحصل على الإذن من آخرين كانوا ربما أكثر نجاحاً في وضع حلول لهذه العلاقة. طبعا يعني معروف أن المسلمين يصلون 5 صلوات يومية، ويفضل أن تكون هذه في المسجد، ويصلون على الأقل مرة في الأسبوع يوم الجمعة، وبالتالي هذه جزء أساسي في العلاقة في تشكيل المحيط العمراني. وهذه مثل ما ذكر الدكتور صالح، كانت المساجد يعني دائما هي يعني تأثيرها يجي من المجتمع نفسه، مثل ما شفنا أنه هم اللي يقرروا على المكان، وهم اللي يقررون على البناء، وأيضا بالذات كل ما كانت المدينة قديمة كل ما كانت هناك أوقاف تغطي جميع ما تحتاجه المدينة، وبالذات للمساجد. تغيرت هذه لاحقا، فرغم يعني أنه المسجد كان دائما يعني هو مركز المدينة، ودائما يكون إما فيه يعني مدرسة أو حوله مدرسة وحوالينه السوق، وكان دائما آسف ورجعنا هنا، يعني مثل ما نشوف هنا في مدينة الخبرة أو في شبام، أنه يعني بسهولة يعرف الواحد وين موقع المسجد، أنه هو في قلب المنطقة السكنية أو المدينة. مع التغير العمراني الحديث، أصبحت المدينة تخطط غالباً من قبل تجار الأراضي أكثر من أنها المجتمع نفسه هو اللي خططها، ويعني غالباً هي عبارة عن شبكة شطرنجية من الطرق والامتداد غير المتناهي، من غير ما يكون في أي علاقة بين حاجة المجتمع والتشكيل العمراني. فأنا هذه بس صورة اخترتها من جوجل عشان بس أوضح كيف الصورة. نجد أنه كراشي وجدة يعني فرق بينهم، وهي عبارة عن امتداد وتحديد الاستخدامات والنشاطات بشكل عشوائي. هذه ممكن تكون مسجد، ممكن تكون مدرسة، ممكن تكون ولا فيه فكرة النيبرهود أو الحي كجزء من التطوير العمراني في معظم المدن العالم، وخاصة يعني العالم الإسلامي. مخطط الرياض سنة 69 كان دوكسيادس وضع، وأنا حبيت أضع هذا عن شوف الفرق بين لما يكون المخطط آخذ في الاعتبار اللي هي التجمعات الإنسانية، التدرج بين الحي الصغير إلى الأكبر إلى الأكبر إلى مستوى المدينة، وبالتالي تكون الخدمات مرتبطة بهذه العلاقة. فطبعا نتيجة هذا التغير في المحيط العمراني أصبح فيه إشكالية. أولا مع كبر المدينة أصبح مكان العمل ومكان الدراسة بعيد عن السكن، فأصبحت يعني في كثير من الحالات يعني بالذات في أماكن العمل 3 صلوات الظهر والعصر ويمكن حتى المغرب تكون في مكان العمل، وليس كما كان في السابق أنه المسجد ممكن يصلي فيه الواحد كل الخمس صلوات من الفجر إلى العشاء. فهذه إشكالية أيضا في دور المسجد. الشيء الآخر أيضا الكثافات المنخفضة أحيانا، وحتى عدم وجود المسجد في المكان المناسب، يعني تخلي الناس تصلي فرادى أو داخل المنشأة اللي هم فيها. فما عاد أصبح يعني في علاقة بين الناس وبين المسجد، إما صعوبة في المشي زي ما نشوف احنا في المخططات هذه، يعني يمكن أن الواحد تفوت الصلاة قبل ما يوصل للمسجد. أيضا المشي، المدينة صارت موجهة للسيارة، فالوصول إلى المسجد أصبح يعني غير متاح. فهذا غير اللي هو التوجهات العلمانية في إدارة المجتمع والمدينة. فهذه من الإشكالات اللي تسببت في ضعف دور المسجد في الحياة العمرانية الحديثة. فأصبحت الدولة هي اللي مسؤولة، والقرارات مركزية أحيانا تكون في مركز الدولة، ويقرروا على مسجد موجود في قرية على بعد 1000 كيلومتر دون استشارة لأصحاب المكان. ظهرت مساجد يعني وإن كان لها يعني سابقة تاريخية، اللي هي المساجد المفصولة. يعني هذه مساجد استعراضية، أنا ما يعني أمدح أو أذم هذه، لكن هذه ما هي يعني ما لها علاقة بالمجتمع واحتياجاته، يعني غالبا سيريمونيال، يعني في ذا زي مسجد الحسن الثاني أو الجزائر أو شاه فيصل ماسك أو حتى يعني هذه مساجد وطنية، لكنها لا تساهم الحقيقة في دور المسجد. أيضا في بعض المنشآت الكبيرة مثل الجامعات والمطارات، أنا اخترت يعني الحقيقة التجربة السعودية، مثلا عندنا مطار الرياض ومطار جدة، أو مثلا مسجد جامعة الملك سعود، أو جامعة البترول. كلها هذه مساجد ما حد يصلي فيها، رغم أنها يعني محطوطة بشكل كبير. يقولوا أنه يوم الجمعة يصلون فيها، بس يعني غالبية الناس يصلون في مكان آخر. فأصبح يعني التقرير على مكان المسجد وأهميته يعني اختلفت بشكل كبير، وقللت من دور هذا المسجد. يعني أصبحت هذه مساجد سياسية أكثر من إنها يعني مساجد مجتمعية. بعد كذا ظهرت الآن أنه في المنشآت الكبيرة بدل ما يكون المسجد منفصل، أصبح جزء من منظومة المبنى الكبير. هذا كان تصميمنا لوزارة المعارف، يعني في حوالي 5000 موظف، فاخترنا بدل ما أننا يعني نضع مسجد مفصول استعراضي، فوضع المسجد في قلب الوزارة، بحيث يمكن وصول الموظفين كلهم إلى المسجد وبإمكانهم الصلاة فيه كمنظر. أيضا هنا يعني مثال على أيضا التغيرات اللي بدأت تحصل، أنه المولات التجارية يعني لاحظوا أهمية المسجد. يمكن في الأمثلة السابقة كانوا يضعون المسجد في أسوأ مكان ممكن، إما في منطقة منزوية ما عند مواقف السيارات ولا شيء من قبيل، ولكن في بعض الأماكن مثل مول غرناطة في قلب المول، وفي مكان جميل ومريح وفي جميع الخدمات من هنا. فنجد أنه يعني عند الاهتمام بأهمية المسجد وارتباط الناس بالمسجد، أنه بالإمكان أن نصحح الوضع، وليس بالمفهوم التاريخي لمكان ودور المسجد. هذا كان تصور أولي مع الدكتور صالح في إعادة تطوير منطقة قصر الحكم في الرياض. فيعني وضعنا الجامع الكبير هو المركز، ومنه الإشاعات اللي هي تجي على المناطق الأخرى، وبالتالي يعني أصبح فيه علاقة بين الاستخدامات الشعبية والتجارية مع قصر الحكم وهنا. وكل ما بعد الواحد عن المنطقة هذه أصبحت في مساجد محلية يسهل على الناس الوصول لها. هذا مثال لتطوير الحي الجديد اللي هو مبني على قسائم يعني، وليس على مشروع. يعني تعطى أراضي فاضية والناس تبني بطريقتها. فهو السؤال في مثل هذه الأحياء أين يكون موقع المسجد؟ هل هو يكون في المركز الجغرافي أو يكون في مركز الحركة للسيارات؟ فكيف ممكن الموازنة بين الاثنين؟ ومن دراسة لبعض السكان يعني وصلنا إلى نتيجة أن السكان لا يحبذوا أن يكون مسجد الجمعة في المركز الجغرافي اللي هو كله منطقة سكنية، ويفضلوا أن يكون مسجد الجمعة يكون على الشارع الرئيسي، بحيث أنه يكون زحام الناس والناس اللي جايين من أماكن بعيدة أنه يأتون إلى المكان هذا. وبالتالي وضعنا هذا المخطط، ويعني هذا عمره الآن كم حوالي 30 سنة المخطط، وبدأت تظهر في ظاهرة طبعا في يمكن معظم أنه بناء المسجد غالبا يكون فيه متبرع، في قائمة انتظار طويلة في وزارة الأوقاف والإسكان، أنه ناس يبغوا يتبرعوا بس ما يعرفون وين، يعني يبحثوا عن موقع كذا. فلذلك غالبا يكون بناء المسجد بتبرع، ولكن إدارته وتشغيله تابعة لوزارة الإسكان. فبرضه ما زال في انعزال بين المجتمع المحلي وإدارة المسجد. هذا مثال لنفس المنطقة اللي أنا وريتكم إياها في الأول في جدة، كيف يمكن أن نعدل في الوضع القائم. فعملنا دراسة على الحركة في الحي، فوجدنا أن الشوارع آخذ نسبة كبيرة أكثر مما تحتاجها السيارة، وأيضا السيارات صارت تخترق الحي من كل الجهات، فما يشعر السكان بأنه هذا حي لهم. فقسمنا الحي بحيث أنه نمنع المرور العابر، وتبقى الحركة فقط على الدائر، وأصبحت هنا مجموعة أحياء صغيرة. نرى في الصور العلوية الوضع الراهن على اليمين، كيف أن المساحة اللي مخصصة للسيارة كانت كبيرة. لما غيرنا أسلوب الحركة استطعنا أن نأخذ أكثر من نصف المساحة هذه، وتحولت إلى مناطق مشاة، وتعزز دور المسجد. كما نرى أصبح المسجد أمامه مساحة كبيرة، ويعني أصبح أيضا سهل على السكان أنهم ينتقلوا مشيا من غير التعرض لحركة السيارات، بحيث أنه يشعرون أنه هنا المسجد هذا أصبح لهم. فهذه واحدة من الأمثلة المبكرة اللي اشتغلنا عليها. كنت أنا مستشار هيئة تطوير الرياض في تطوير الحي، فوضعنا المنطقة المركزية بحيث أنها هي اللي تكون للمشاة، والسيارات تجي من الجوانب، ووضع المسجد في الكثافة الجغرافية، مسجدين، مسجد في الجهة السفلى من الصورة، ومسجد في الجهة العليا. وبالتالي أصبح، لكن طبعا هنا هذا حي خاص لأنه كله موظفين وزارة الخارجية، فأصلا يعني في تكامل بين المالك وبين المستخدم، لكن هو أعطى يعني مثال على كيف تنجح العلاقة. وهذا هو اللي يعني يهمني في هذا اللقاء، أنه دور المسجد اللي يتحكم فيه عاملين: عامل اللي هو الفيزيائي والتخطيطي للحي والإطار المكاني، والعامل الآخر اللي هو الجانب الإداري، من يدير هذا والعلاقات اللي جايه منها. هذه اللي بتخلي العلاقه بين اثنين. ففي مركز حي السفارات يعني وضعنا المخطط بحيث انه يكون منظومه من العلاقات، ان المسجد يكون هو المركز ويكون حوالينه الوظائف اللي تعزز دور المسجد، مثل المكتبة العامة والمرافق الأخرى، بالإضافة إلى إدارة الحي اللي تحولت بعد كذا إلى أنها أصبحت هي الهيئة العليا لتطوير الرياض، أصبحت الآن الهيئة الملكية لتطوير الرياض. والحي هذا أو التخطيط هذا حصل على مجموعة كبيرة من الجوائز العالمية، وتصلنا دائما يعني اتصالات من آخرين يحاولوا أنهم يعني نوضح لهم إيش الفكرة اللي وراء هذه. طبعا فيها هذه حل لإشكالات حديثة. أولا العلاقة بين السيارة وبين المشاة، بحيث أنه تصير المشاة يستطيعون أنهم يتحركون بحرية من بعيد عن السيارات. هذه إشكالية موجودة في الوضع الراهن. الشيء الآخر يعني فين تكون مواقف السيارات، وكيف تصير العلاقة بين الآتي من الخارج وكيف يتحول إلى بني آدم. يعني بدل ما تكون حركة السيارة هي اللي تتحكم، بعد كذا يصير البني آدم هو اللي ذا. ولذلك يعني أصبح يعني الحي هذا مكان اجتماعي على درجة عالية من التوافق. في أولا الدرجة العمرية، يعني يستخدمها الأطفال من يمكن سن 2 إلى كبار السن. دائما هناك شيء يناسب الأعمار المختلفة. أيضا الثقافات المختلفة، سكان حي السفارات من ثقافات مختلفة وأديان مختلفة، واستطاعوا أنهم يتعايشوا، وأصبحنا مكان للتعارف في المجتمع. فأصبح دور المسجد، والمسجد مفتوح 24 ساعة ليس كالمساجد الأخرى. أيضا المواضع ودورات المياه فصلناها عن المسجد بحيث أنها تكون لخدمة الحي، بينما عندنا احنا اللي تبع وزارة الأوقاف يعني يقفلونها بعد ما يسلم الإمام على طول، فبالتالي ما في أحد يستطيع يعني أنه يجد الخدمات الحيوية اللي يحتاجها الإنسان. فالخلاصة يعني أنه هالجانبين هذه اللي هو دور المسجد يعني يحتاج إلى عمليتين. واحد أنه الإطار التصميمي الحضري يجعل المسجد هو الأساس، وتصير يعني الحركة سهلة للسكان والمستعملين في هذا المكان. وأيضا تغيير مفهوم من يعني يدير المسجد، المفروض المستفيدين وليس الجهة الإدارية اللي تأخذ مننا. فهذا ما حبيت يعني أني أشارككم فيه، وشكرا جزيلا.
شكرا للأستاذ علي شعيبي. والآن إذا ممكن أسأل أيضا الأستاذ صالح الهذلول ليشاركنا في الحوار، وأيضا سوف نفتح المجال للأسئلة. طبعا احنا الآن يمكن شوية متأخرين في الجدول، المفروض من الساعة 10 إلى الساعة 10:30 هو بريك، فراح ناخذ من البريك تقريبا ربع ساعة، وبعدين ناخذ لنا بريك بحدود 10 دقائق إن أمكن، ومن ثم نعاود الحلقات اللي هو حتكون ورشة بعد البريك. أنا بنتقل إلى الجهة الثانية. هلو، أوكي، يعطيكم العافية. أولا شكرا على هذه المحاضرتين الشيقتين عن دور المسجد في المجتمع وعلاقته من الناحية المكانية والناحية الاجتماعية، وكيف إذا تغير مكان المسجد من الحي إلى مكان آخر يفقد الناحية الاجتماعية، وكيف أيضا التطور الذي حدث في الآونة الأخيرة من نقلة العناية بالمسجد من أن المجتمع المحيط في المسجد هو الذي يعتني فيه إلى أن تكون هيئة أو جهة رسمية تعتني في المسجد، وما له من تداعيات من ناحية اللي هو العناية بالمسجد وعلاقته بالأفراد، علاقته بالأفراد من ناحية دينية، علاقته بالأفراد من ناحية اللي هي الروحانية والعاطفية. ودي أفتح المجال، لأن بسبب ضيق الوقت يمكن أفتح المجال دايركتلي إلى الأسئلة. فدكتور مشاري، وفي ميكروفون، إذا الميكروفون عند الكاهن يعطيك العافية.
أول شيء بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حقيقة يعني أشكر المحاضرين على المداخلات الحقيقة المهمة. يعني الآن تكلمنا احنا عن هل انقطاع العلاقة بين المسجد وبين المجتمع المحيط. أنا أذكر زمان كنا نقول مسجدنا، يعني مسجدنا في امتداد. الدكتور صالح في محاضرته الأولى تكلم عن تاريخ، جزء من تاريخ الأسرة مرتبط بالمسجد. الأيام هذه يعني هذه العلاقة انقطعت كما ذكرتم. طيب وش الحل يعني؟ وش البديل؟ لأنه الحقيقة احنا خلال السنتين أو الثلاث سنوات الأخيرة كنا نفكر في ما هي الحلول. يعني إذا هذه العلاقة انقطعت والدولة هي اللي أصبحت مسؤولة عن المساجد، وأن هذه المسؤولية تحدث إرباك وإشكال، ويعني علاقة باردة بين المجتمع وبين المسجد. طيب ما هو الحل؟ أنا أعتقد أنه هذا السؤال موجه للجميع، وخصوصا طبعا اللي في المنصة، عشان نسمع هل هناك فعلا إمكانية للحل، أو المفروض نحن نرجع للنظام التقليدي التاريخي، أو ممكن نحن نحول المسجد. أنا شخصيا اقترحت أن نحن نحول المسجد إلى مؤسسة ذات صفة اعتبارية مرتبطة بالجماعة، جماعة المسجد، وأن هذه الصفة الاعتبارية ممكن تكون ذات استقلالية مالية كذلك، وأنها تصبح كمؤسسة مالية صغيرة تشرف عليها الدولة، لكن المؤسسين لهذه الجماعة هم جماعة المسجد. هذه واحدة من الأفكار، لكن ليست بالضرورة هي كل الأفكار، أو أن تكون الفكرة هذه عملية ويمكن تطبيقها.
أنا ودي أبو علي هو اللي يتكلم، لأنه هو له سنين طويلة مسؤول عن تخطيط المدن. وأنا أذكر قبل حوالي 30 سنة، لا والله يمكن 40 سنة، لما كنا نتكلم عن يعني الاهتمام بالمناطق الجديدة والتطوير الجديد، كان يقولوا خلاص يا أخي المدينة انبنت ما عاد فيها، خلينا نشوف كيف نصلح اللي هنا. خلال 40 سنة اللي فاتت الرياض بنت يمكن 10 أضعاف ما كان موجود، وما زلنا نبني جديد. فنعتقد أنه ليس المسجد بذاته أنا بالنسبة لي هو الهدف. أنا أعتقد صحة المجتمع هي الأهم. المجتمع نفسه احتياجاته وعلاقته. يعني المفروض أنه كل تطوير يحصل الآن يتم المحافظة عليه بحيث أنه يحقق مفهوم المجتمع عن الحي وعلاقته مع بعض، علاقة المسجد بالخدمات الأخرى. فتخطيط الأحياء السكنية بالذات أنا أعتقد أنه ممكن يحل الجزئية هذه. من غير ما يكون التخطيط هذا مناسب، لا يمكن أننا نحل المشاكل بشكل إداري. يعني أن نقول والله جماعة المسجد هم اللي بيكونوا فيها، لأنه أحيانا يعني نجد أنه المسجد في موقع غير مناسب لمشاركة الأهالي، وهذا اللي حاصل في كثير من الحالات، أنه المسجد يعني ما يشعرون الناس بانتمائهم له، لأنه ما هو المكان اللي هم يعني يصلون فيه ولهم علاقة فيه. التغير في العلاقة مع جماعة المسجد، يعني في محاولات، يعني في أعتقد أنه وزارة الشؤون الإسلامية والأوقاف الآن بدأوا يشعروا بأهمية وجود وقف لكل مسجد. فالآن بدأت تظهر يعني أشوف يعني مساجد ملحق فيها أوقاف مباشرة، ولكن هذه ما تجي إلا لما يكون المكان يعني في على شارع تجاري أو شيء من قبيل، بحيث ممكن يكون في محلات. لكن مثل المسجد الحي اللي هو في الداخل، البلديات تمنع وجود أي محل أو خدمة تجارية داخل الحي، يعتبرون هذه مضرة. ف يعني الضغط الثقافي والمجتمعي على الجهة الإدارية بحيث أنها تعطي لسكان الحي المسؤولية عن إدارة هذا المسجد، لكن إذا هو ما يدفع فما له حق أنه يتكلم. فهنا يعني أنا أعتقد هو هذا السبب اللي تغير في العلاقة هذه، وأنا ودي أن الدكتور صالح هو اللي يتولى الموضوع هذا يعني.
أنا ما عندي إضافة. يمكن اللي ذكره أبو محمد عن ارتباط المسجد بتخطيط الحي والأربن باترن وطريقة ربط العناصر مع بعض، هذه جزء. لكن إضافة للنقطة اللي تقول عليا أنه يعني عندنا احنا مسجد أعيد بناؤه من 3 سنين وجاي، نصلي به الجمعة وجنبنا، وكان معروف أنه اللي بناه قبل 40 سنة، ولذلك معروف باسم مسجد مثلا مسجد صالح. فجيران المسجد بعضهم رأوا أنهم يبون يعني لازم يعاد بناء هالمسجد، شكله ما يليق بالوضع اللي حنا فيه الآن، سمبل وبسيط، ما في تعقيد ولا في كذا، ما يصلح. فراحوا دوروا متبرع. الإشكال فقط قال المتبرع أنا أبغى أكتب اسمي فوق على المداخل، يكتب بشكل ثابت بحجر وكذا. تستأذنون، ما قال لهم تستأذنون، بالصدفة أخو صاحب الأخوة اللي بنوا له المسجد الله يرحمه أنا أعرفه، فجوا لما 2 من الجماعة بعد صلاة الجمعة قالوا يا أبو علي ودنا تكلم لنا فلان علشان يعني أننا بنهدم المسجد بس اسمهم يبي يروح. هم ما كان لهم اسم أصلا، ما حطوا اسمهم، لكن معروف أنه المسجد مسجد آل صالح مثلا، أنا ما ودي أقول الاسم بالضبط. فقلت لهم أصلا أنا ما أتفق معكم بأن هالمسجد يهدم، المسجد ما بولا العافية، مسجد ممتاز وكبير ولا أنتم موسعينه زيادة ولا شيء، يعني ما في سبب أنه يهدم المسجد. المتبرع اللي يبحث عن الأجر قولوا له يروح لأماكن أخرى ما فيها مساجد ويتبرع فيها. طبعا ما قالوا طيب، يعني قلت لهم أنا ممكن إن كلمت الرجل فأنا بقول له لا تأذن إن كان أنكم تبون نكلمه، ولكن إن كان أنكم مصرين خلوننا برا الحدوثة، خذوا رقم الرجال وكلموه أنتم. ما أدري عاد هم كلموه ولا لا. الشاهد أن المسجد هدم وأعيد بناؤه، وكتب اسم المتبرع الجديد، والمتبرع أصلا ما هو بيمنا ولا نعرفه ولا يعرفنا ولا له مكان ولا أعتقد أنه يدري وين موقع المسجد. فعملية الارتباط السابق اللي كانت يعني مثلا في المثال اللي أنا وريته من البداية، محمد الهذلول اللي بنى المسجد الأول ما كان عنده إشكال أنه يهدم وينقل الخشب ويبنى هناك، لأن كل المجموعة مع بعض وشاف هو أنه هالأمر فعلا المسجد ذا بعيد، والأمر لخدمة هالكوميونتي وهالمجموعة، فطالما أنه بعيد ما خل. يوم صلوا الجمعة هدموه وشالوا الخشب معهم وراحوا للمكان الثاني وبدأوا يبنون وبنوا. العلاقات اللي كانت سائدة تغيرت تماما. فهالنقطة هي اللي أنت تثير يا دكتور مشاري وتقول كيف يمكن استعادته، ما أدري.
يعطيكم العافية. عندنا تقريبا 4 أسئلة وعندنا الوقت أيضا ضيق، فإذا أسأل من الحضور وأيضا من ضيوفنا أن الاختصار في السؤال والاختصار في الإجابة على أساس نقدر نجمع كل الأسئلة اللي ممكن. فتفضل الأخ، بعدين عندنا الأخ من هجي.
شكرا. دكتور شاهم علوش من جامعة السلطان قابوس. طبعا بدي أشكر المتحدثين أولا، وثانيا الرحلة اللي أخذنا فيها الدكتور صالح في تطور مسجد الهذلول تثبت لنا أنه الأفكار المعمارية مثلها مثل الحضارات تتحرك بشكل حلزوني مع الزمن، تظهر وتختفي ثم تظهر مرة ثانية. المسجد مثل ما ذكر الدكتور صالح والدكتور علي كان مشاركة اجتماعية ثم أصبح مسؤولية الدولة، والآن نسمع نحن عالميا على أفكار الكو ديزاين أو التصميم المشترك والسيتيزن بارتيسيبيشن أو مشاركة المجتمع. سؤالي هو إذا كان من الصعب إداريا إعادة سلطة المسجد للناس لمستخدمين المسجد ناحية التصميم والإدارة، هل بالإمكان انتجريشن أو تنتجريت أو حتى نحط شروط على المعماري لمشاركة المجتمع قبل عملية التصميم، بحيث المجتمع يعطي رأيه في التصميم خلال عملية التصميم بدل ما يكون هو مستخدم باسيف مثل ما بنقول؟ هل هذا ممكن تطبيقه في وطننا العربي حاليا؟
أنا بقول لك عن تجربتنا يمكن في السعودية، وأرجو أنه ما يكون في إجابتي للموضوع هذا حساسية. احنا مجتمع خلال اللي يمكن أقول 70 سنة اللي فاتت، والدولة أخذت مسؤولية توفير كل شيء للمواطن، فإحنا أصبحنا مجموعة من الشحاذين. يعني المواطن دائما يكتب أبي وأبي وأبي. في السابق كان يجتمعوا ويقرروا أنهم يعملون بأنفسهم، وهناك موازنة بين التكاليف وبين الفائدة اللي تحصل. فهذه أول إشكالية، أنه الاتكالية أصبحت الآن جزء من المجتمع، أنه أصبح كل واحد يقول يعني إنما، ولذلك ما يكلفوا شيء، أنه حتى يطلب شيء غلط، يعني مثل ما حصل في المثال اللي ذكره الدكتور صالح. فهذا الشيء الثاني. الشيء الآخر أيضا، إحنا ما تعودنا على أننا نستشار، وفي أكثر من مثال حاولنا نشرك المجتمع، فأصبحنا مجتمع هنود حمر، كل واحد عنده حق الفيتو. لا يمكن أنك أنت تصل إلى قرار ما دام أنت تشاور الناس. يعني هذه إشكالية، لأن كل واحد يبغى رأيه هو اللي يمشي، ما في شيء. يعني نعرف أنه هذا يعني مبدأ اتخاذ القرار على رأي الأغلبية بما لا يضر بالأقلية، هذا غير معترف فيه عندنا في مجتمعنا. فهذا وبالتالي يعني معاناة ما لا حد في أنك تحاول تشرك الناس. ولذلك أفضل شيء يعني إذا كانت تشرك الناس، ممكن تشرك الناس في مثل هالجلسة هذه، ولكن بعدين بالأخير في ناس راح تقرر غير ذا، وليس القرار بالتصويت ولا القرار بأخذ رأي المجتمع. بس أنا أقول إحنا يعني مجتمع ما تعود على أنه يشرك في اتخاذ القرار خلال 50 أو 70 سنة اللي فاتت. يعني.
ننتقل للسؤال الثاني.
شكرا. هنا بروفيسور سيبلي من جامعة كارديف. شكرا جزيلا على الدكتور شعيبي والدكتور هثلول على
قربي الميكروفون.
اوكي. شكرا جزيلا على هذه the presentation. Sorry, I will speak English because it's easier for me. But I just want to say thank you so much for these key presentations, because I think one of the importance of the mosque is the system of values that are shared by community. I would like to highlight the two things that have been highlighted in these two presentations. The first one by Professor Hathloul about the waqf and the importance of waqf as a system that used to be extremely sustainable, and the values that are associated with waqf in a way that the values are for common goods, for sharing and leaving good deeds for the future generation. Talking about future generation is the importance of children today, and we are in a we are in a community where this is killing our future generation, the phone. And the mosque is the place where people re-establish multi-generational contacts between social contacts as well as spiritual contacts. So the other aspect is the Islamic ethics about environment, and we can see, for example, the importance of greenery and the beautiful lesson that Professor Hatroul has mentioned is the tree, the water from wudu and the water from the well is not wasted, and it's there for greening and creating the bustan next to the mosque. And the bustan is watering the tree, and the tree will give the dates, and those dates in the qiyam of how it used to be with the waqf system were again for the public good. For Professor Shuaibi also the importance of common walking, common meeting, regular. The mosque is not only for praying, but it's also for sharing values, environmental values, and also values for common goods. It is not about prestige, it is not about what the mosque looks like, but it's what the mosque does for communities. Thank you.
شكرا. دكتور.
So I'm going to have to just cut short the discussions. I'm assuming it's more of a commentary than an actual question. And if we can wait for it to be discussed after, because we have just one more, and we can. There were two, but we don't really have time. So I apologize, but we will have to postpone it until after the workshop that will start at 10:30. And the reason for this, and if I take a minute, we started late today because there was a lot of late arrival, and I think by now you discovered that the conference center is not close to the hotel. So please, for tomorrow, to make sure that you plan the timing so that you're here at least 10-15 minutes before the lectures. The reason it's a huge compound, and by the time you arrive and find your way, it takes time. So I really appreciate if we can all try to be here on time tomorrow. But that's one of the reasons that we were late today in starting, and we'd like to shorten. So we will not take a coffee break. We will have one more question, and then after that we will switch to the workshop so that we go back on track for the conference. Okay? So تفضل دكتور.
شكرا كثيرا. ساري حنفي من الجامعة الأمريكية في بيروت. في الحقيقة بدي أعلق على سؤال الدكتور مشاري. في الحقيقة سؤالك هام جدا. يعني أنا بدي بس أنا ربيت في مخيم اليرموك في دمشق. كان جدي عضو بلجنة المسجد، كان المسجد الكبير عبد القادر الحسيني. على مدى السنوات كان يلم مصاري من الأهالي، وهن لاجئين وكانوا فقراء جدا، والجامع كبر بأموال الناس اللاجئين والإنارة والمي والصيانة. إذن أنا برأيي يعني في فكرتين رئيسيات. في نحن ما بنتخيل قد ايه الكوميونتي، المجتمع المحلي قد ايه ممكن يكون معطاء في الحقيقة. وكل يلي بيجي من وزارة الأوقاف وكذا بيخرب الدينامية بعلاقة المسجد بالحي ومفهوم الحي اللي اليوم سمعناه كثير. بدي أشكر المتحدثين. والنقطة الثانية أنه في النهاية إذا ما في استقلالية للمؤسسة الدينية بدولنا هي إشكالية. إذا عملنا استقلالية للمؤسسة الدينية بما فيها وقفيتها، ممكن نتخيل هذه المؤسسة الدينية تنظم الأفراد المؤمنين بمسجدهم، بمراكزهم الثقافية وهكذا. شكرا كثير.
شكرا. اعتقد انه يعني يمكن هذه اكثر من يعني هي مداخله اكثر مما هو سؤال، اذا ممكن على اساس نختصر الوقت. في اخت صار لها فتره ترفع ايدها، بس الله يعافيك ايضا يعني مداخله وليست سؤال. اوكي تفضلي، بس هذا خلاص يعني اضطر ان ننهي السيشن لكي يعني نستطيع ان نكمل جدول المؤتمر.
شكرا جزيلا. نورة غبرة من جامعة الملك عبد العزيز. عندي بس مقترح بالنسبة لكيفية ضم المجتمع في المسجد. في جمعية مراكز الأحياء بدأت في منطقة مكة المكرمة، وأنا أعتقد أنه هي ممكن تكون انطلاقة مرة ممتازة أن يكون جماعة المسجد بالفعل مرتبطين بجمعية مراكز الأحياء، لأنه هم أوريدي مجموعة، هم من أهل الحي، كثير منهم متقاعدين، كثير منهم متفرغين وبيشتغلوا في إعمار الحي، وبيلاقوا مشاكل مع أهل الحي برضو، يعني ما هو طريق ميسر. بس I think this could be like a starting point، إنه كيف مثلا وزارة الأوقاف ووزارة الشؤون الإسلامية ممكن تتعاون مع جمعيات مراكز الأحياء. I think this is it's just an idea that I had. Thank you very much.
شكرا للمداخله، وبهذا ننتهي اللي هو الحلقه الاولى من حلقات النقاش للمؤتمر. شكرا للاستاذ صالح الهذلول وللاستاذ علي شعيبي على هذا العرض الشيق. والان سوف نبدا خلال دقيقتين من يعني ما في وقت للبريك، بس ان شاء الله راح يكون وقت البريك اللي هو الساعه 12 وقت الغداء، وقت اللي هو من 12 إلى 1. يعطيكم العافية ومشكورين، جزاكم الله خير.
شكرا. الله يسلمك.
Dawn makes its way through the darkness, heralding the birth of a new day, and the takbirs rise. Takbirs that are heard from the east to the west, in houses that God has permitted to be raised, to proclaim the union of earth with the sky. It expresses the nation's civilization, and architectural traditions are mixed with civilized development, drawing a wonderful painting that takes you to a world of beauty and faith. Because it is so, the Abdul Latif Al-Fawzan Award for Mosque Architecture was an attempt to return mosques to their multiple major rules, which they began with, besides worship and salat. In its fourth round, the Al-Fawzan Award has developed new strategies for work based on 3 axes: going global, strengthening community partnerships locally, regionally, and internationally, focusing on digital work through the electronic portal and electronic scientific encyclopedias. It selected an arbitration committee composed of selected experts in the fields of architecture, arts, and sociology, namely Dr. Rasim Badran. He got a PhD in architecture from Darmstadt University of Technology in Germany, who views architecture as an ongoing dialogue between contemporary needs and inherited historical cultural values. Kashif Mahbub. He is a creative architect and has received a number of international awards, including the Abdul Latif Al-Fawzan Award for Mosque Architecture, the Aga Khan Award, and the Riba. Emre Aralat. He received a professorship at the International Academy of Architecture. He has been involved in numerous international architectural and urban master plan projects, having his work exhibited in a number of major international exhibitions. Ahmed Mustafa. Ahmed Mustafa is an artist and researcher in the field of Arabic art and design, and an expert in the European neoclassical tradition of plastic art. He dedicates his work to abstract installations inspired by texts from the Holy Quran. Sari Hanafi. He is a professor of sociology at the American University of Beirut and head of the Islamic Studies program at the American University. Holds many important positions in the field. The preparatory committee has set 3 conditions for participation in the 4th session, which are: the mosque must have been built after the year 2000. The mosque is in use and have not won any award yet. Accordingly, the arbitration committee selected the mosques on the shortlist as follows. Mayor Muhammad Hanif Jain Mosque in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Unique design that is not different from the architectural spirit of the country. It is located in the heart of the densely populated capital. Its walls are built of local red bricks. It was influenced by a Mughal fort built in 1678 called Lal Bag Fort. The mosque consists of several buildings: the prayer hall, the women's prayer room, and the workers' residence. The idea of the bridge connecting the two buildings stands out in it, with slots in the walls and ceiling that allow ventilation and natural light. Australian Islamic Centre. Far away in the south of the globe is the Mosque of the Australian Islamic Centre. It consists of a multifunctional first floor that includes a cafe, a restaurant, a musalla, and a meeting room that connects with the local community. A mezzanine floor used as a musalla for women. The ceiling consists of a group of triangles that serve as light catchers, reflected in distinctive colors that recall the ancient style of Islamic decoration. Dugramajazide Ali Pasha Mosque, Ankara. The mosque is located on an area of 5,100 square meters. At first glance, the traditional design features of the Ottoman mosque, such as the dome and minaret, can be seen, but it has a unique modern feel, in the form of a steel structure clad with glass, which allows sunlight to illuminate the main prayer hall. Isra and Miraj Mosque, Al-Kubar, Saudi Arabia. Inspired by the cube-shaped Kaaba, the Isra and Miraj Mosque appears in a unique style, as its glass facade is inscripted with the hadith of the Isra and Miraj, and its tall rectangular minaret. Mosque rests on the glass walls that connect the prayer hall with its outer edge. Penzberg Mosque in Munich, Germany. A mosque that combines modernity and originality. Among its four glass facades, the iron minaret stands out, with Arabic inscriptions that take up the art of Arabic calligraphy. As for the interior, the glass allows the light to penetrate while shielding the view, allowing the faithful to concentrate on prayer. The composition of the mihrab, which like the minaret, takes up the art of Arabic calligraphy, is striking for its simplicity. Abu Bakr Mosque in Lichinga, Mozambique. From the outside, the mosque does not look modern, not even if you look at it from the inside. The ancient style in which it was built, based on the technique of stacking bricks, arches, and wooden ceilings, as well as the traditional minaret, puts you in a world of simplicity, purity, and reverence. However, it blends perfectly with its surroundings. Bioclimatic Community Mosque, Indonesia. A unique experience, the Bioclimatic Mosque in Indonesia is a model of energy solutions, and it is a fragmented mass that includes several facilities. Its walls are built of 3,000 handmade hollow bricks. They allow a certain wind speed that cools the atmosphere beyond the heat and humidity of the climate. Al-Jarrah Mosque, Medina, Saudi Arabia. The mosque looks very simple from the outside and inside, but it is also revolutionary in design. The wall of the mihrab is made of volcanic stones arranged in a slightly irregular shape to draw inspiration from the designer of the mosque of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The mosque is illuminated from the center and the Qibla wall, which has been moved 1 meter to allow the light to enter. Great Mosque of Algiers. The third largest mosque in the world was built in Muhammadiyah at a cost of $1,032 million and can accommodate 120,000 worshippers. The mosque is more than just a place of worship. as it has a library that can accommodate 2,000 visitors and a striking facade with a 264-meter minaret of modern design that ends in a glass cube. Haji Abdurrauf Mosque, Maligaon, India. The old-style mosque seems to incorporate the basic elements of the mosque, such as the minaret and the dome, into its design. The simple structure of exposed bricks gives it a spirituality that is enhanced by the reflections of indirect light that penetrates through the dome and the walls. Banyuwangi Prayer Room, Indonesia. This place may not seem like a mosque to you, and that is the attractive element in the design idea that came as a disjointed shape of the Holy Kaaba. However, the designer wanted the square roof of the building to be closer to a cone to raise the level of the spiritual connection between earth and heaven. Then the building tilts towards the Qibla. Allowing light and air to penetrate between the layers of wood and iron. Ljubljana Mosque, Slovenia. The first mosque in Slovenia was built 50 years ago. By just looking at it, you can expect a different future for the area in which it is located. Its semi-cubic shape and the filtering of light in the fabric dome inside, giving a very special, dazzling scene. It is not just a prayer hall, but an integrated complex with several buildings, distinguished by the idea of a movable wall that opens the prayer hall to the outside courtyard. Abijo Mosque, Lagos, Nigeria. This mosque is very much embedded in its environment. The material used to build it is laterite, a regularly cut sedimentary rock that is inexpensive and available in the city. Its simplicity is fascinating, as it is a vivid example of futuristic mosque architecture in Africa, combining antiquity and modernity. Gargash Mosque, Dubai, UAE. Its design is challenging because it must succeed in combining the spiritual dimensions of the place with the hustle and bustle of industry. Therefore, the designer felt that the Quranic verses should be engraved on the exterior walls, following the traditional shape of Emirati buildings, and that natural light should penetrate through the dome and the walls. Masjid Cyberjaya, Malaysia. The main idea of the Malaysian Cyber Mosque is to return the style of the mosque to its roots as a community center, modest in appearance and rich in content. Its facilities include a spacious compound that serves as a green buffer zone, a garden, a dialysis center, a multi-purpose room for classes and events, and an open courtyard for informal gatherings. Tubala Mosque, Serbia. At first glance, the Tubala Mosque seems to have the shape of a simple cube, far from civil life and residential buildings. From the inside, the musalla lets in light from both sides above, which gives it a special spiritual dimension. Qasr al-Husn Mosque, Abu Dhabi, UAE. The design of the mosque is linked to the identity of the desert area, as it is divided into separate blocks derived from the shape of the sand, with a vertical part that gives the impression of a minaret, and a prayer hall that derives from the exterior its interior design to look like a coherent art painting. Pakistan Navy Mosque, Karachi, Pakistan. The design focuses on preventing harsh sunlight from directly reaching the prayer hall, in addition to escaping moisture through natural ventilation. At Tasamah Mosque, the mosque is considered a departure from the norm in Tunisia, bypassing the traditional external forms and richly decorated spaces. The rooms and elements of light symbolic value, such as the mimbar, the mihrab, the minaret, and the prayer room, were sober and quiet. Amman Economic Zone Mosque, The noise generated by the surrounding industries was a major challenge for the surrounding industries, as Salat needs a quiet environment. So, the design was solid and concrete. Despite its simplicity, it gives the impression of an invisible dome, symbolizing the mosque's architecture. With its cross shape above the prayer hall, it is completely closed, except for the single window-like opening in the center of the roof, through which the sun enters. DIFC Grand Mosque, Dubai. A cube within a cube is the idea on which the DIFC Grand Mosque is based. The outer form of the cube consists of suspended screen that acts like a veil to provide shade and privacy to certain areas, opening to the public in its original form. Around the mosque, a reflecting pool along the facade forms a park for visitors. As-Salihin Mosque, Bandar Seri Begawan, Brunei. A modern historical building where you will experience spiritual moments that will take you back centuries. In a modern spirit and creativity in its implementation, it combines spiritual construction and urban beauty that is not overcrowded with details and decorations. The areas range from the columns to 3 vaults, up and down to reach the main access, where the mihrab and the central dome.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome you in the second workshop in the third international conference in mosque architecture. The workshop will open the discussion about the shortlist. You must know that our respected jurors already selected the winners, but we cannot announce the winning project in this session. It's not allowed. Inshallah, we will announce them on 5th of March in Riyadh. This is the protocol of Abdul Latif Al-Fawzan Award for Mosque Architecture. But as you noticed in our documentary film or documentary clip, maybe it was a little bit long, 12 minutes, because we have 22 mosques spread all over the world. In the past 9 months, our technical reviewers, and most of them with us today in this room, they went to each mosque. They did their own study, met with the designers, with the imams, with the people. They prepared their reports and presented their reports to the technical reviewers. Now, our jurors, they presented the reports to our jurors. Now, our jurors, they know more about the shortlisted projects. This is why they selected, inshallah ta'ala, the best of the 22. And you must know our respected juror also met in January this year and selected the short list among 250 mosques all over the world. And it was a Zoom meeting, unfortunately, because the coronavirus the COVID-19 is still creating a problem for some of our jurors. Now I will leave the floor to Dr. Rasim, because he's the head and the chair of the jury committee, and I must apologize for the Emiri Orlat, because he left last night, and he's apologized from all of you. Next time, inshallah ta'ala, he will be with us, inshallah, in Riyadh in the seminar after the ceremony of the award إن شاء الله.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, I am the worst to be one who يعني, let's say, guiding the jury, because I like to be in the second or third row. I don't like to be in the. But anyhow, Mshari told me you have to be the what's it called, the ايش يسموها يعني رئيس اللجنة أو head of the jury team. Well, actually, in our discussion, it was very interesting to look how sacred spaces being envisioned through different cultures, through the different environments, different, let's say, way of beliefs, different social, let's say, content, presence of different societies, because some of them are very humble humans, some of them are very organized. So the mosque shows the way how this kind of social behavior transforms itself to the man-built structure, which is the mosque. Now we try to understand the mosque has another role. It's not only for prayer. It's more like a convention center or like a community center. So it's welcome the people who are living in that community or in the city to become their place to play and to learn and to chat and also to pray. So I think this is a new paradigm about mosque, how it can be envisioned. And we found, alhamdulillah, that many of those who've been shortlisted from the 24, 22, which have been shortlisted, in a way, they have this kind of approach. Even from when you look at from architectural point of view, it doesn't look like a mosque in some projects, which I found very interesting. I mean, we as jurors. So I think and there's something which I was a bit. I have to say, we would like to present more than 5 projects because we found 7 very worth to be nominated. But our friend Bashar told me, Rasim, we have to choose only 5. So that's why we choose actually projects which tackle each one, give a message how that things could be. I mean, so some of them are a bit disappointing when you look at it, but when you go deep in it, then you know that there's one topic which has to be revised or renewed as how mosque can look like in the coming 20 years. Some of them has to do with the spiritual light, how we can invest in this aspect, and the other is to do with some symbolic element, how it can be put in the right geometrical form. So I think we are giving messages. Don't look to the mosque as a whole. Look to the particular elements which can add to the mosque and collect them, and maybe you can build up your ideal mosque when you talk from each nominated or winner this particular side. I want to give to our, we have also Dr. Sari, and you have Dr. Ahmed Mustafa, and then
we'll have them one by one.
Okay, so maybe you can say something about the.
Thank you, Dr. Rasim. Actually, I am an outlier in this jury as a sociologist, although I have a civil engineering degree. But my work, my protracted work on social science is really how to bring conversation between our bustling and dazzling modernity with our tradition, an inherited tradition, without any fetishization. And I cannot tell you how much I enjoy this. As I told Dr. Mashari, I need a certificate that I got a crash course in architecture. I mean, not the fact that I was a member, but just I learned so much. In the same time, I think I contribute because for me, it was the spirit of this award, as we understood it from the team of Abdul Latif Al-Fawzan, is to contribute in 3 paradigm shifts. First, shifting from the monumental to really it's a more modest mosque that fit a community. Shy away from the monumental, الصرحانية. The second paradigm shift is about relationship to community and the mosque as a social space. It's time to go back to what have been the role of the mosque historically. It's not only for praying. It's a one of the master mission of Islam, but there is other. And I think when you saw with the 22 mosques, some of them in the areas where the Islam is or Muslim are minority. So mosque it's a very important to play a role beyond that, but not only in minority Muslim countries. I would say in each countries. So this is the second paradigm shift. And the third paradigm is really how to bring this conversation between what is our need today in 21st century and to keep some of the symbolism of the past. And I should confess, as Dr. Rasim also disclosed a little bit of the deliberation, I should confess that we, the fifth, we not always in the same line about how much we will bring, if you like, the tradition. For instance, I kept the minaret. For me is something really important as a sign, simply because I am a big traveler, and I often need. Now we have a Google map, okay? But I would say 5-6 years ago, especially when you don't have internet as a visitor, you need to rely on a visuality of the mosque. So this is why I want to always to have this visualities. And visuality traditionally is a minaret. Okay, dome, I think it was an architectural solution more than part of the visuality.
Yeah,
so
maybe you have to say maybe to choose a smart idea of how minarets can be look like.
Absolutely.
Smart solution, not the minaret as it's been understood by people.
Exactly. It's not about what kind of crescent you have, and then no, it's not about that really. So I would say this award push us, and we push our selection of the 5 mosques really to 5 showcases to say, look, this is how mosque can be in an environment where is resisting hostility, racism, Islamophobia, how mosque can be in a place where big cities, a small town, and so on. I will stop here.
شكرا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My name is Ahmed Mustafa, and my research basically was about the proportion script, al-khat al-mansoob. The most fascinating thing in this particular field of study starts with handasat al-huruf. The majority of us don't know exactly what it exactly means by هندسة الحروف. The actual field of geometrization of the letters, basically trying to identify the prime art of Islam. Penmanship is precisely considered to be the prime art of Islam. From that point of view, my joining of my colleague here, the architect, those who implement the forms together, is precisely what actually made me try to find out exactly what is the role of the letters in the different segments of any project. We had almost some sort of similar to conflict, small conflict, but how later I realized exactly from which point of view they're trying to judge any of these projects. However, I will comment on this particular point on the role of the form and its meaning when we actually go through the different projects and the different involvement of these projects into the what's so-called geometrizations of this particular form. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment on the universality of what we saw. So if when we place all these mosques on at least the 22 shortlisted ones in the map, we see that it's all over the world. And the reason for that is very simple. As we know, new mosques are being created, being constructed, because out of need, people are coming to pray more and more. Mosques are getting busier. It's not able to hold enough worshippers. It's the same story all over the world. While, on the other hand, not to compare, but just to understand the situation, while on the other hand, churches are being decommissioned, secularized, and turned into event spaces. And my wife is a musician, and she has played in many, many churches around in Europe especially. But it's just the opposite for the mosque. The reasons for that could be many, which I will not go into. But to say that these mosques are out of need, the needs of the society, the needs of the community, spiritual needs, the needs of the individual to the needs of the state. And our selection, I think, expresses that need, expresses the smallest of mosques. It is in the short list, as well as very, very large mosques and very well-built and well-budgeted mosques as well. So on one hand, we have a mosque which was constructed out of a budget of $40,000 US, which you can imagine is very little. And then there's another mosque which is $2 billion. So that's the whole gamut of things that we were sort of faced with. And this is why it was so interesting and so exciting to sort of look at the whole palette of materials, of spaces, of ways the architects and the community in many ways, it's just not the architect, but also the community who participated not only in the design ideas, but also in the actual construction of the mosque. So all of this goes to show that the mosque is no longer just a piece of architecture, but a kind of a social soul, the soul of the society itself. And I'm very happy to say, not just because we're sitting here today, I'm very happy to say that the Al-Fawzan Award has brought much needed attention to this aspect of architecture in general, but to this aspect of architecture in the Islamic world. I don't really personally like the word Islamic architecture, because it's much more, it's architecture in the Islamic world. And similarly, it's not just mosque architecture, but architecture of mosques. But then I think this very, very strong discussion that has been going on for the past 1400 years has now come to a point where the simplicity of mosque spaces, the abstraction of the interiors and the exteriors, devoid of various things, the abstraction in many ways goes with our current contemporary lifestyle. And perhaps that is why the architecture of mosque has become such an important discussion, not only in Islamic or Muslim societies, but also anywhere in the world. And this variety that we saw was most exciting. And I think we had a reasonably tough time deciding on 5, which we had to bring down from at least 7. And so as hopefully we'll see in March, inshallah, that it will show this variety, this universality, and this focus or this critical research based on local needs of the community and the society.
I want to add something. I want just to say something which is very important. I mean, when you look, Jean and March, when you are exposed to the 5 selected projects, we are trying to address something maybe which is not usual in many world awards, that each project have chance to be studied from the recipients, from those who want to get more, and to discover that in that specific let's say outcome, or this project have tackled something which was not used to be seen in mosques in general. So each one has some specific topic to be stressed on it. So it becomes like a study model. It's not just wow, this is a winning project. This again, it's a new paradigm that you are trying to take these 5 selected projects as study case, which each one has some stress on a very specific domain, different than the others. So as if you are making collections, and I hope that from these 5 projects you can create the ideal mosque. I mean, if you take them together. I don't know. I want to widen your fantasy, because usually by competitions, okay, you take the project. Oh wow, great! But no, I want to stress that each one has in something hidden. Try to discover it and put it in your mind if you want to design a mosque later. So I think this will.
Can I add a point? Actually, also we pay so much attention about sustainability and the question of ecology, and how there is a component of renewable energy is inserted in the design. So I think we cannot afford anymore with this sweeping global warming to have a built-in of the mosque, a huge that it's used only 10% of its capacity in 6 days over 7 days. So we insist on looking about ecological models, sustainable, affordable for the maintenance. It was something very important. Yeah.
Can I just add to what Dr. Badran was saying? For the last few decades, we have suffered because of this sensational architecture, wow architecture and star architecture. But the architecture of the mosque is inherently about being humble, about humility. And so I think perhaps this is an important message, not just for architecture of mosque, but for architecture in general, because which is an inherent humility and then transformed into this abstract form and space, we have this strength of message globally, and especially in this time when we understand that excesses are not what we need. We need to focus on the essences of things. And I think our short list also demonstrates the essences of thought, of execution, and of course, what has been sort of demonstrated.
Professor Kash, what about the diversity? How you saw the diversity within the short list? And this question, it's all our respective jury members.
Well, so, as I just pointed out, it's a very universal but very local as well, all of these mosques. And so we have not only in material, but also in execution, because the needs of the community were, in most cases, or in all of the cases, were addressed very in detail. So I'm sure the architects had gone through extensive research, which is apparent in our discussion with our reviewers, who had been able to engage with the community and in many times with the architects themselves. And this comes through in what we saw and what we experienced.
Yeah, but if we link it to our conference title, we said the mosque, a cross-cultural building. And if I want to link our shortlist to the title, the main slogan of our conference, how can we make this link? Dr. Rasim and other jury member, please. We'll return back to you, Kashif, and Dr. Ahmed Mustafa also. Because we claim that a mosque, it's a cross-cultural building, or a building that crosses culture.
Yeah.
Okay, that interact with the local environment, local cultures, and interact with the geography, environments, but still it's strong in its function and its identity. How this happen? Yeah. How can you see and feel this in the short list?
Well, I think the short list show you how the mosque or this sacred space being perceived by different culture, by different societies, by different contexts, by different environment, and I think from these different let's say paradigms, we try to choose how this can be transformed from the intangible to something tangible, which is the physical product of that sacred space. And the level of sacredness, again, it has to do with also some aspects about where it's located, how people are interacting with that they are not, let's say, get in this, what they call it, wow effect. I mean, we try to eliminate, because this is the contemporary, we're talking about wow, because sometimes you see it and then forget it. But the thing which stick in yourself is the very specific moment when you are with yourselves, looking to that prayer hall, how the light penetrate this hall. I mean, this become actually one of the aspects. So we actually found by these different proposed or shortlisted or winning projects that each one tackled some specific element. Maybe you don't like the appearance of the mosque, but in that specific project, there's something being solved very careful and with some challenge, with some brilliant ideas. So we took it as a subject to be searched after. I mean, and in other one you have another. I don't want to know to. I want just to. By other one, maybe about the minarets, how the minarets been solved. Is it there on top there? So how will you look to this materialistic commitment to the minaret? Is it minaret or is semi-minaret? So I think this is also another way of giving, let's say, hint or message to the recipients who want to learn from, because it's a learning process. We want the outcome of that 5 projects, that it becomes a subject to be taught, something to be investigated and to be even get deep in the secret of each one. And this may be unprecedented when you talk about chosen project, which each one has something to tell you. We couldn't find a project which is completed. I think this I found very interesting, that from each one you learn something, but please take it in your mind that this is actually was the target to choose the 5. I wish to choose 7 because we found 2 others, but we couldn't put them. And so I think this become actually, it's not as by other competitions or awards, you get the project, wow. No. Take this project and try to get deep to understand, and we will mention it in our report, that this project has that specific point being tackled for the first time, although maybe the appeals don't look appealing, but you know what I mean? I don't know if I am sometimes I got out of the subject, but I think just to show you that maybe this can be, we have maybe just even to have to write another report to tell them that for the first time we are trying to find 5 projects with 5 different points to be investigated. This
is what we are looking for.
Yeah, this become a teaching tool for the recipients, for all of us.
Yeah.
And I hope someone will be so clever, he put all these 5 aspects and put them on Mosque. This become an outcome.
Yeah. Can I add?
Professor Sari?
Yeah. I like your question about cross-culture versus specificity.
Yeah.
And I would say if I thought about two elements, I would say really cross-cultural. First of all, is we cannot do a mosque anymore where the place for women is without windows and is in a very auxiliary places. It's not inviting. So historically, in many mosques I visited, the place for women is not inviting them. They are not welcoming in the Sadr al-Bayt or So I think we pay so much attention about where is a place for women to pray, and it's a commode, it's inviting, etc. And then I like so much your question, the engineer who asked question last session about the kids and how to create a space more social than the mobile. And I think we thought about that. And one of the beautiful mosques, actually we selected, one of the picture was kids play in the courtyard of the mosque, even with a small football. So if you like, really we want to the mosque not as a pray hall, but as a campus to be so welcoming to all the family members. This is one. The second one is we try as much as we can to select mosques where the boundary between the sacred and the profane is blurred. I think the whole problem, and I work as a sociologist about criticizing some form of secularism, and specifically the French one, if you take as a model, for instance. And unfortunately, a lot of the Arab world elite left. They inspire so much by French secularism, which doesn't fit at all to our society. So the problem is a compartmentalization, how they see the spheres, the political, the social, the economical, and the religious. So the secular will deal with all that, with the political, economical, and the social, and the religious only deal with the death and marriage, ceremonial marriage, and birth and death. So it's unacceptable. Religion, I would say, I am sociologist of religion. I can tell you religion is very important everywhere, in Latin America, in Africa, but also in America, and more we see a paradigm shift even in Europe. So I think I mean, the jury, we agree that we wish all the mosques without fence, for instance. And only case where the fence was necessary, because Kashif tell us, for instance, that if there is no fence, the goats and the cow will enter the mosque. So it was a raison d'être for this fence. But we try to praise those who really blur this continuity between experiencing the city and experiencing the mosque, connecting the spirituality to the mundane life, because this is really important.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Ahmed, if you have any comments on this issue?
You see, if we consider exactly what is said about the letter Ra, Ra, ربع دائرة, a quarter of a circle, diameter aleph. And it has a predetermined in the mind dot or ratio. The actual expression وفيها سنة مقدرة في الفكر. It took me more than 2 years to find out exactly what is meant by وفيها سنة مقدرة في الفكر. Sunnah, the word sunnah, is not necessarily confined to the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. But it's a rule. وفيها سنة مقدرة في الفكر. It has a predetermined in the mind ratio. This ratio in itself is what considered to be, I would say, I don't want to say the main expression to what it's meant by sunnah, the actual field attached to what is meant by the ratio of letters. However, it's very enlightening to consider the relationship attached to a particular letter, and then to consider the attachment of the 28 letters to each other, and the relationship between the 28 letters and the cycle of the moon. As you know, the moon has 28 cycles, but 14 letters, the first 14 letters are considered to be the very cycle upon which the following 14 letters is to actually reflect the exact location of the first 14 letters. It's, one has to pay attention, serious attention, to that relationship between the letters and the moon and geometry. Remind you, the Arabs didn't know anything about geometry. It took them about just under 300 years to find out what geometry is about. And once they realized exactly the role of geometry, they excelled. They passed any other community in understanding what is the geometrization of the letters is all about. We will see that through different aspects of what's called proportion script and its relationship to the projects we're going to go through it.
Thank you, Professor Ahmed. Kashif, because this will be the last comments, and we will open the discussion, starting with our technical reviewers.
Yeah, so I think the title has many layers, cross-culture.
Yes.
I think it's a very difficult thing. But, well, just to start from the point of secular architecture. So for the past few decades, the museum has been held or hailed as the secular temple. And that's why it's spread everywhere, from Bilbao to everywhere, and it has become a magnet for all sorts of people who come to enjoy culture, to enjoy art, etc. But at the same time, one needs to understand that the mosque, for me, is a secular space, because the architecture of the mosque is basically a very neutral thing. It is the most neutral religious space in all of the religions in the world. And that is why, in many ways, it's a sect. So the Muslim really carries his or her religion in his or her heart. So when one goes to pray, one takes the faith, prays, and then shares, and then comes away. So I think the space is beautiful because it's so neutral. And that's why the acceptability of the mosque, of the Islamic mosque, for the greater audience of the world has been so quick and has been so profound. And I think therein lies the strength of this architecture, which not only talks about spirituality, it is based on spirituality, it's founded on spirituality, and of course some rituals. But then it extends into the landscape, it extends into nature, it extends into the society. It brings in society, it embraces society, and it's open, it's not closed, it's not dark, it's open, it's about light and air, and that's why ecology is so easily possible in the architecture of a mosque. And of course, because the mosque now is situated not only in the deserts of Arabia, but also in the colder climates or even hotter places around the world. And so that is why we see so many variations of the manifestation of the form and the architecture of mosque, which has to do with a response to the climate, a response to the community, to the culture, the cross-culture that you talk about, kind of a reflection, a mirroring of that culture and the climate of that place.
Thank you. Now I will open the floor for discussion, but I will start with the technical reviewers. I have 3 or 4 of them. We'll open the discussion after the comments of the technical reviewer. We'll start with Alim, please. Then the professor from Kenya, and Ali Lari. Any other? We have 3. Yeah, 3 at least. 4 from Rida al-Muslimin. Rida al-Muslimin, because I can't see Rida al-Muslimin from Sydney. Please, you can start.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's really my great pleasure to be invited by Al-Fawzan Award for Mosque Architecture to be here and to have been invited to be the technical reviewer. There was a super nice experience, very exciting, and my comments on really I appreciated all the comments that I heard from the respectful jurors. That's very nice. And do imagine what sort of battles probably that could have been so while discussing. So coming back to the mosque which I was reviewing and which I visited only a few months ago, which is in Pakistan, in Karachi, I would like to say that indeed I do agree that the physical expression of the mosques was pretty much different. So we can be comparing the mosque with, as it has been mentioned, of $40,000 and the one which where millions of dollars were invested. So the physical expression is different, but then there is the spirituality, and there is this very unique design and very unique idea which was behind the design of the mosque. That's very important, and sometimes, as long as we deal with contemporary architecture, it has not always been conventional. So through the presentation while I was making it, I realized that certain items which I have been presenting, they casted certain doubts. I mean, so there was always room for reflections about why. Of course, I was some sort of I was channeling the ideas or the rationale or the logic which I received from the designers, and of course this was somehow transformed through my understanding of what it should be, because I'm an architect also. And that's beautiful. This was the whole process of reviewing, of comparing the different aspects, not purely architectural, of course, but also the socio-economic aspects and the way the mosque was affecting the community and the other way around, how the community was affecting the mosque and how it was perceived. The mosque was perceived by the community. So that's a beautiful experience, and I do anticipate with, of course, certain impatience, the announcement of the results, because, well, this has been teamwork with the Al-Fawzan Award for Mosque Architecture. Thank you very much for the beautiful support, the designers and everyone who was a part of the process.
You are welcome. Professor?
Thank you so much.
Mic, but you can come.
I just want to, perhaps if I stand here, I might be able to be seen and heard.
Yeah.
With all due respect, thank you very much, the jurors. And thank you very much for Al-Fawzan for according me an opportunity to learn, first and foremost, and also to begin to understand some of the things that perhaps before then I could not. I'm very gratified to listen to the comments and observations that have been made by the different jurors, and that they're going to be, they looked at it very holistic. They looked at it not in terms of the wowing, but the awe, and perhaps as the artifacts of culture, which then begins to translate into this materiality, these buildings that we're talking about. And that for me is very satisfying, that the issue is not really to look at the building per se, but it's just to begin to understand the genius of Rosai. What is the spirit of this place? And for that I'm very grateful, and I want to thank the jurors for emphasizing that and beginning to really be able to isolate the profane from the sacred. And the mosque is an attestation of culture, and culture is not static, it's very dynamic. Even this morning we were actually shown how we can be able to begin incorporating things which are contemporaneous, which things that are now relating to people, so that we can be able to have that spirituality and the social aspect. After all, we are created as social beings, and then of course we have got to have this relationship with the Maker. Thank you very much, and I really look forward to hearing who the winners are. But I would think that all of us are winners, because it had to have this composition for winners to be selected from. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, Madam Muslimin.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to reiterate a couple of themes that was already discussed by Dr. Mashari and the jurors. The themes that I think is very relevant to the conference today, which is the crossing culture between different domains. As an academic, I was trying to introduce the design in the segmented manners. Learn how to do structure, learn how to do spatial arrangements, and so on and so forth. But through this selected mosque, I realized that there is some area that cannot be separated clearly. There is always a crossing boundary between two domains, and that's what makes, I think, this mosque is very, very interesting, because it doesn't give you only a physical comfort for the user. It also gives you an emotional satisfaction when you look at it. And then, I guess what makes a mosque, the blends of the mosque is very interesting, is that when you achieve physical and emotional comfort, it allows you to anticipate the next level of satisfaction, which is intellectual satisfaction of what makes this, the mosque is beautiful. And once you reach physical, emotional, and intellectual satisfactions, what I personally felt when I visit the mosque is that you reach this, the fourth, I think, the ultimate level of spiritual comfort, which is, I think, the goal of all of the mosque is.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ali, Mr. Ali Lahi. Yeah, you can come. In fact, we have 10 technical reviewers. Some of them, they left, and they have to go back. Yeah. But alhamdulillah, we have 4 of them in this room. Yeah. 5? Jimma, yeah, you are here because I'm looking for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
بس ما يسمع okay, it's working now.
Mic is working.
So first of all, I'd like to second my colleagues' comments. Al-Fawzan, great job. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to tag on to something that Kashif, you mentioned about the neutrality of space. This idea of neutral is a very modern concept. And really we need to question and probe this idea. Do we want to be neutral? Like, what does neutrality mean in relation to what? This modern concept has been pushed and, advocated for, but with no clarity on what it really means and to what end. So when we visited these mosques and you truly begin seeing a space that you're so used to, but now you're not of the space, but you're a visitor from outside. You've been tasked a mission with very clear guidelines, 5 or 6 criteria to look at. And you begin seeing that really when we talk about sustainability is not just about having a green building in the sense that, oh, look, we have natural ventilation, or look, our materials are, from close by. But sustainability is the community that comes together, that creates programs together, that sees each other on a daily basis. The museum doesn't offer that. What does the museum offer? You go visit, once, maybe a year if you're lucky. There's like programs by some intellectuals or artists, and great respect to them. But really, what happens to the average person? What happens to the values of equality, of us all being at one level, values that are truly human, that are natural to us? The mosque reinforces these things. And so when we talk about neutrality, I think the question that we should be asking in relation to the mosque is not whether the space is neutral or whether the space is sustainable in its materials and its architecture, but the real question is this space, does this space reinforce values? Does it connect with our true innate inclinations and natures of doing good and cleansing our, as we kind of colloquially say, cleansing our hearts and our spirits and our minds, for that matter? I think that's what the mosque offers, and it offers it 5 times a day, and in a grander scale 1 time a week, and a grander scale on Eid prayers and what have you. This is a space that, in these functions, in these respects, no other space competes with it. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Jimmy? And we have one more, Hamad Hussein also. Alhamdulillah, good. In this case, we will stay in this room more than the time which was assigned for the session. we need 10 to 15 minutes more.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be part of Al-Fawzan again as a technical reviewer. But I have to say there's something I tackled quite differently, or maybe I can add on to the other technical reviewers, is the process. Right, as technical reviewer, it's kind of tricky, right? You get the job description to be the one who actually translates what's happening on ground. And then you become having this very critical judgment of what you see on social media, on Arch Daily, and some beautiful mosques that have been built, that have been sustainable technically, and that by organization are very interesting. But then when you get to ground, you actually see the state, the way it's been implemented, the social aspects about how they are responding to it. And then we kind of question, how can we as technical reviewers translate that upon a jury? And it was very interesting to see how much of a critical thinking is recommended by us as technical reviewers to actually be able to process this to the jurors and have an objective kind of attitude towards it and not subjective. And it's very tricky on several notions, but the interesting part is none of us as technical reviewers came from the exact location. So geographically, we're kind of dispersed, and we actually seen the diversity that was set there. And I think that diversity was very interesting to start to narrate that to the jurors. So we hope we've done a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Please.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak here. I think fellow technical reviewers have already said some very pertinent points, but I would like to add that the process of the Al-Fawzan Award has been very transparent. This is the second cycle that I have been part of this award. What's important is, from the technical reviewer's point of view, is that there are some mosques which are very nice to look at in photographs when we see them published or we see them on the internet. But when we visit them, there are a lot of other factors that we need to consider in order to judge them. And that is what brings out the real essence or the real success or otherwise of the mosque. And conversely, there are some mosques which may not look very attractive in a photograph, but they may prove to be working perfectly for the community and for the users. So when a technical reviewer visits a mosque, that is when we are able to extract the real essence of the mosque and the way it is serving the community. So I think this is what our job was, our task was, to assess, collect data, take photographs, understand, and then come back and analyze that data and then compile it and present it to the panel of jurors so that they get a complete picture which is different from what we see only in photographs. So I believe that the technical reviewers help the jurors in assessing it in a very transparent and fair manner. And I think that is what, in my experience, that's how it has been with the panel of jurors. So I think as a technical reviewer, the process was very fair, transparent, and very systematic. And for that, I thank the Al-Fawzan Award and all our respected jurors for a job very well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahmed. Now we will open the floor for discussion. And I remember you raised your hand. Are you still interested to ask questions? Please. Who else? Yes. And 3, 4. That's it. We have 4.
Assalamu alaikum. I want to ask you about the common language of the architectural form of the mosque. What you have talked about and what you have done is very great and very important topics, sociological and ecological and spiritual, etc. Especially that it was not only theoretical, with the great field work. but still, what is the common language? Does the people, in the end, architecture still as a language which the people can read it. For example, if we go back to the great tradition of Islamic mosques for hundreds of years, from Spain to Indonesia, and so when everybody sees it, he can read it. It is a mosque. It's the form. But now, some of the mosques, I think maybe it don't look like a mosque, and maybe the problem was bigger in the competition of retail mosques. So I have this question still in my mind. How can people read the form as it was? Although the great traditions of the Islamic mosque was very diverse in materials and styles.
Thank you. Because we cannot, and we didn't have much time. I need a direct, straightforward question. And if you decide who's the one you want him to answer, it will be great.
Maybe collect the questions.
Okay, we'll collect the questions, and what do you think?
Final word.
Okay, then the one and then Dr. Sibley, then the one and I can't. حياك الله. We'll have 4 questions. Majda is the.
نفهم عربي.
ماشي. We will translate to Kashif. No, don't worry.
The name of اسم المؤتمر. المؤتمر العالمي الثالث لعمارة المساجد أم لعمارة المساجد؟
هذه بنخليها للدكتور أحمد مصطفى يعني. بروفيسور ماجد. بروفيسور ماجد. Can we have the mic, please?
لعمارة
لازم نجيب يعني عالم في اللغة العربية في المستقبل يشتغل معانا إن شاء الله في تحديد العناوين. يعني وجهة نظر على فكرة يعني.
أريد أن أسأل هل كيف القيم the values which are embedded in Islam and in the Quran, how are these values used to interpret the mosque in the practice, in the management of the mosque, in the behavior of the worshippers while the technical reviews are taking place. مثلا, the ecology is an important aspect of in the value of Islam, like عدم التبذير, الحفاظ على البيئة, الحفاظ على الحياة, الحيوانات, and all that. شكرا.
And the last question.
السلام عليكم. دكتور عامر حبيب الله, جامعة الملك عبد العزيز. Thank you, Judy, for your hard work. Thanks for the technical reviewers. My question is, we heard the word paradigm shift many times in the discussion. Paradigm shift is like a fundamental change in how we think about architecture. So do you really think there is a paradigm shift in these examples? And I would argue that the paradigm shift started much earlier during the modernity. And what we are seeing here is an application and practice and how we are doing that. So do you really mean paradigm shift that we understand it as an academic, that there's a significant change, or you're just using it as like an application? That's my question.
Yeah, we'll open the floor for discussion.
Yeah.
For 2 minutes each.
Yeah, I want just to let's make it short. The mosque has not a specific form. I mean, you can say that it's an open. You can even pray under the tree. Yeah, so please don't put the mosque as a ma'bad. This is what I want to say. Now, about the paradigm shift, I mean, we consider that Salah is part of the social life. So when we talk about urbanizing the mosque, it means that the mosque become not a building, it become like a small city. So you can work, you can pray, and you can entertain. This is the second answer, and I think I let those.
I will Actually, there is a tension between the jury, to which extent the conversation between our need in our dazzling modernity and our tradition, I mean this continuity, how visually the mosque, visually visible and as a sound visible, unfortunately, in many, many places. Its sound is not visible. There is no Sawt al-Adhan. I told Olim, one of our technical reviewer, that I've been in Uzbekistan, and I didn't hear that. Uzbekistan, 90% of the population are Muslims, and I didn't hear the voice of Adhan in this country. I mean, it's really, yeah. So if you like, there is an issue to be discussed really in a conference by Al-Fawzan, as you are organizing academic work. We need to, if you like, to streamline what is the minimum of this continuity. And I agree with you. I mean, I am personally pushed to this continuity. Even when, every time we expose one mosque, we say, yeah, Sari, this is the minaret. For me was really, not only for me, but I mean, it was now about paradigm shift. I think the way, the terms of reference we got about the criteria from Al-Fawzan, from Dr. Mashari and the steering committee is really induce paradigm shift. The very fact that we will not be bloated by a monumental mosque, and when the future architects see what are the architect chosen, what are the mosques chosen, they will know that they should not go in this direction. I think the very fact that the sustainability and ecology is inherent part of our selection. When it will be mentioned how we select each of these 5 mosques, I think architects know that if there is no alternative energy system, ventilation, natural ventilation, natural lighting, I mean, it's most probably not be selected. In this meaning, we induce paradigm shift, if you like. And the value, and I will stop here, I think exactly, I mean, the juror really, I mean, they immerse in what is the Islamic ethics. I mean, it's not Islamic fiqh. Fiqh should change, I mean, except the qat'iyat. But what is ruh al-Islam? What is the spirit of Islam? And how this spirit of Islam should be translated in one of the sides, the most important side of this of Islam. So we look it into account.
Dr. Ahmed, do you have any comments on this? Okay, Kashif.
Yeah, so to go back to that paradigm shift, I think it takes time. If you go back 50 years, you will see not many variations. And in today's time, we live in a very exciting time because of all this communication, digital age, etc. It's a very exciting time. We have to accept that. And I think our architecture, our places of worship, all of them should reflect that excitement, the excitement that exists in societies. But there's also a lot of distraction, which means it's a duality. So how to allow for concentration, solitary sort of focus on meditation and spirituality, but at the same time talk about this excitement. But we should not forget that a mosque has very strong, the design of a mosque has very strong lineage, has very strong heritage, very, very strong history. And so unless we connect to the past, we will not connect to the future. That is a given. This is beyond discussion. The Impressionists in France could do what they did because they were very good in drawing the perfect painting, making the perfect painting. And then they decided, no, we want more abstraction because we don't want to mimic the photograph, we want to create something else. And I think the charge to the architect today is the same. We must be very well studied, very well researched in what we do, especially in the design of mosques, and then go to that kind of abstraction, because for me, as I said, Islam is very much about abstraction. It is a very liberating faith. It's a very liberating religion. It allows you more things than perhaps any other religion. Today we are not clear about this, but just to think about it, it's very liberating. And I think the mosque, the architecture of mosque also liberates the design of a place of worship. And I think that's where the strength of it. But of course, always, as I said, linking back to the past to understand where we are going in the next 1400 years.
Thank you all, and I think we are reached to the end of our session. Thank you, our respected jurors. Thank you, the technical reviewers, and all the who's here in this room. And maybe in the future we can use the short list and develop a studio workshop for our students, analyze these projects, and ask the jurors and technical reviewers to participate in this jury. It will be a very interesting educational experience. We will see how visible this idea, and inshallah ta'ala will implement it in the future. Thank you all, and we have a break now, as far as I know, and we'll return back after the break.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good afternoon. In this session, we'll have two presentations. We will have our Professor Hassan al-Din Khan and Professor Bernard O'Keefe. Actually, we have two of the most prominent scholars and professors, editors, researchers in Islamic architecture. O'Keefe is concerned with the history of art and Islamic art and Islamic architecture. He's professor at the American University in Cairo. And our dear Professor Hassan al-Din Khan, since a long time, he's a professor at Rogers University, professor of architecture, conservation, and Islamic architecture. He has authored more than 10 books concerning the subject, specifically on mosque architecture, contemporary mosque architecture. He he cooperated with the setting of the Aga Khan Award for Architecture. He was the chief editor of Mimar, and actually he's widely known with his research, scholars, and lectures. Professor Hassan al-Din Khan will lecture us on Beyond Originalism toward a new universality in mosque architecture. Please.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I would like to first thank you for inviting me. It's really good to be here. I've been involved with the Al-Fawzan Award since the first, I was on the first jury and on the second, so I'm pleased to be back here. I'm going to talk, and I'm going to skip through some parts of my talk quite quickly, but anyway, we'll see how we get through it. First thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is questions of identity in architecture. I think a question came up earlier, is how do you know a mosque is a mosque, and how does one identify with a mosque? And we know that it's the mosque expression deals with Muslims and Muslim identity, and it's recognizable through the use of a whole lot of what I'd call a set of parts which are used for mosque design. The question is, what is a mosque and what does it design? The reason this is, for me, is interesting is that I'm going to be talking a little bit about what I call regionalism, which is mosques developed in particular regions due to technology and other things. And then I'm going to end up with a suggestion that we've moved beyond regional expressions into this sort of new universality, which is slightly different from what used to be international styles and other things in mosques. So the question is, what is a mosque? The one on the left, of course, is having a facade make a mosque a mosque? The one on the right is actually an electric substation in Turkey. So, what does that tell us about the architecture? I'm hoping, I guess, yeah. In Shanghai, this is a mosque in which the dome is placed on the roof. It has no connection with what goes on inside the mosque. But the Chinese Muslims felt they needed a dome to express who they were, and they needed a minaret. So they designed this into a mosque. In Indonesia, in Jakarta, in Chinatown, again, Muslims in Chinatown, which are Chinese Muslims, felt they needed to express something on their shop houses. So inside it's a pretty straightforward building, but they needed to put a dome on in order to make sure that people knew who they were. My presentation really got several parts to it. One is the contributions of Islam to architecture, which I'm going to skip through those parts, and then talk about a typology of mosques, and then talk about pan-Islamism, because for a while in the 60s, there was this idea that Islamic buildings or Muslim buildings, especially mosques, should have certain characteristics. And then really the main part of my presentation will deal with the programs that exist in mosques, and this has come up in discussions earlier, and what the issues they raise. And then finally, that new technologies, new changes are happening, and we are in a moment of transition, I feel, in mosque design. We all know that these are the things that Islam has perhaps contributed towards, is geometry, design, three-dimensional geometry, the Muqarnas, for instance. These are both old and new, and they're examples from around the world. I won't even bother telling you what they are. And that the other big thing I think was brought up this morning, that calligraphy, the writing of mosques, is very important in terms of us understanding. Architects like to think of architecture as the mother art. And earlier this morning we heard somebody say, no, it's writing and calligraphy. So it's all right, they both are. Epigraphy on the mosque, the idea of different kinds of calligraphy, mainly Kufic in many cases, especially in contemporary. The other thing is the Islamic garden, sometimes thought about as a paradise, but not necessarily, and has geometry, has other aspects to it, and water as an important part of a mosque as well. But about, I guess, 20, 30 years ago, I'd put the typology of mosques as being 5 different kinds. And they dealt with the hypostyle, which originates in this part of the world, to do with technology and climate and construction. So all these things come together to form this. And the reason for this is interesting, is the fact that these give rise to certain regional expressions in the mosque itself, in what we might call regionalism in a way. The second one is the 3 domes in the courtyard, which is often in India and South Asia and elsewhere. These are not all just in one part of the world. The 4 Iwan Mosque in Central Asia, Iran, the pavilion complex in Southeast Asia and China, and the Ottoman, which is the grand central space. There are hyperstyle structures, all in different places. The one on the top right is in Cambridge. So they're in different parts of the country. The Indian mosque, the Badshahi mosques, and this idea of the three domes in the courtyard is prevalent in many, many different climates. The 4 Iwan Mosque, the great mosques in Indonesia and China, pavilions, this set of pavilions with a very different architecture of it, and then the central space, which the Ottoman model, which occurs in many of the contemporary buildings that we see around. Oops. This has led to a while back of what one would call, perhaps could call the pan-Islamic features of a mosque. What are the things that people recognize most easily as being in a mosque? And they are to do with the entrance threshold, the portal, the domes, the minarets in other cases. This happens to be the earliest mosque, purpose-built mosque in England. And then I bring up this question, and which has been brought up before, is would you recognize these buildings as mosques if you did not know they were mosques? Does it matter? Because obviously what goes on inside is prayer and a whole lot of other factors. So if you look at these things, some people have thought that they don't have minarets, they don't have other domes and things like that, so they're not really to do with mosques, but they really give us an idea of what it's about. The elements that are most used are the threshold, the portal, the gateway, which you transit from one state into the area of prayer. The minaret, which people have talked about, take all different shapes, and in some cases, the minaret signals the presence of a mosque. Now, minarets in the early days, or quite often in villages, whether they're in West Africa or elsewhere, there weren't any minarets. And one of the reasons, I think, is that you didn't need to tell people where the mosque was because you lived in the village and you knew where it was. But on the other hand, you had to signal that the mosque has to be something that's big. This one to proclaim in Australia has really tall minarets. You can talk about questions of architecture. Is it proportionate? Are they really required? What do they do for the architecture? The other thing that emerged really towards the, I suppose, early 18th century, although they've existed in buildings before that, including Al-Aqsa, is the crescent. The crescent as a symbol of Islam. The dome is the other one that's, of course, prominent in most mosques, a lot of mosques. And domes are the sort of signal that we all belong to the Ummah in one place. And in a place like Indonesia, which didn't have domes as part of its architecture, traditional architecture, suddenly started importing these ready-made domes that you can buy on the side of the road, prefab stuff, to put onto a mosque to signal this is Islam, although it had nothing to do with the local architecture. So there's an imported set of ideas that come in through things like the dome. There's various other things, of course, which are required. There's not many things required in a mosque. You face the right direction, you pray, you need an open, clean space, but that's about it. But in the other case, you would have ablutions areas which are changing, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And sometimes they're very elaborate. This happens to be in Morocco, in Casablanca. And this is probably the most elaborate ablutions areas that I've seen anywhere in the world. There's a separate one for men, separate one for women. And this is in addition to pools of water. This is really the ablutions area itself. And then the courtyard, which is common in many mosques. What's happening now is historically, we know that the complex has been a social and communal space as well. It's not just about prayer, but it's about having had soup kitchens for the poor, madrasas for instruction, health centers, depending on what the location is and where they are. And in a way, they had a relationship to the community in which they were built. More recently, interestingly, mosques are perhaps becoming back to what was the function of being a community and outreach center. So in many new mosques, and these are mosques in the West and some not in the West, are including sports facilities, facilities for kids to play. We're talking about cold climates and people playing indoors, not just outdoors in the courtyards. So they're trying to do a bunch of new functions. Then, of course, the idea of reading the Quran and Quran competitions is not a big one, but it's very present in many different mosques. And then, interestingly, one of the features that has come into the mosque is our clocks. And maybe this is because we've become such a time-conscious society, or societies, that the mosque is included within mosques and in the areas around, including right by the Kaaba itself. And it's a reminder of time in some senses, not just the time to pray or the azan, but place to be. And the other one is the question of women's space. Women and children spaces are the ones in yellow. Identify the women's balconies mainly, and they're screened off in most cases. The spaces are usually slightly separated, not always, and there's a change coming in this. There's a change in that is happening. So the mashrabiya and jalis or separation. When I was looking at mosques, I studied about 250 of them in the 1980s, and discovered that about 10 to 15% of the space was allocated for women in mosques. And that's a small amount, but now this is going to be changing as well. This happens to be in Australia, and the women's balcony is above on the left. And we talked about children. The women's balcony, the photograph in the bottom middle, to me was quite interesting. You go, and that's a space for nursing mothers. And they're separated by a glass. They're acoustically soundproofed, so that women and children, infants basically, will have their own space without disturbing anyone else. And they're still in the balcony, the back of the balcony. So different kinds of features are appearing in the mosque indeed. In some places we know that there are separate mosques for men and women, as they are for Sunni and Shia in certain places. So this division of the population into different groups occurs in many different places. The other thing, and these are two mosques in the States. In one case where there's a low barrier, and in the second one in Atlanta, the men and women pray together, slightly separated, but quite often the same. At one time in Indonesia, men and women prayed right next to each other, but now there's this normative idea of dividing them up more. So this issue of what women and their place in the mosque and what it means for design is one that is something that we're having to deal with. The facilities for the handicapped. This is again something that has only occurred fairly recently for the elderly and handicapped, and in most cases they actually have to bring in. You can buy these seats, or they bring in these folding chairs into it. We haven't come to terms yet about what we do in terms of the mosque. And these are, again, ablutions are being for handicapped, which are being changed. In some mosques, they're being prepared for burial, places for burial. In burial grounds that don't happen very often, but they do occur in certain instances. And then this regional expression of mosques is changing, in my opinion, and it's going towards greater abstraction in many cases, and the use of different kinds of materials. I'm just going to say that, in fact, what's happening is we're now getting into smart buildings and smart mosques, where control systems are becoming changing. The loudspeakers on top of minarets, in most minarets, the muezzin does not climb up. They're done through recording. So that has a different, it's beginning to do a different function. The one in the middle which says Pons is actually a mobile mosque and a mobile minaret. The idea of passive climate control has been there since the 1960s. Green roofs, sunken gardens, photovoltaics is a big one. This is in Cambridge in England, which actually is very reminiscent of the center in Rome, with it's essentially a hyper-style hall of some sort, done in wood, done in timber, and the idea of this light as a symbol, light as being one of the major features of a mosque, as the Surah Al-Nur, et cetera, suggests. Architectural light as an importance. In Dhaka, the light comes in at the mihrab itself. It's a mihrab of light. It's the direction we face. The National Assembly Mosque has both artificial and other lighting. The lighting is at the level that really lights the worshippers or allows them to worship, and the rest of it is in great darkness. There's a couple of recent experiments which are quite interesting, where the lighting actually changes shape. So you can define the space as being smaller because the light actually defines the space, and it can be larger depending on how many people are praying in the mosque. And that's, again, allowing technology to do things. We all know this as an example of new technologies, the umbrellas that can fold. And I would just mention again this question of smart buildings, digital manufacturing, which is just beginning to come into mosques, the 3D printing and all the rest of it. This one, of course, the biggest, and robotics. The biggest one of these happens to be being built in Dubai, has been built as an office building. But mosques, it'll happen in mosques too, especially depending on the scale of the building itself. So what's happening to me is that the mosque is doing several things in design. It's no longer, it's a sort of transition between what's happening, that form at one time followed function. Now it actually, I think, follows an idea of the concept of what a mosque or space should be about. It's shaped by technology more and more. In the old days, it was shaped by use and structure giving its regional characteristics. And that mosque can be anywhere. The new mosque can be anywhere. You don't have to, they no longer relate to the different areas. And they're becoming more and more abstract and less recognizable, as we see in some images. And that because of technology now, anything is possible. I'm suggesting that this is the direction mosques are going to be going in, away from the regional. It's an interpretation of mine, and may or may not be, right? You know this very well in terms of the mosques, which are now come up with an idea, it's not that they don't have a sense of spirituality or sense of calm, but they're moving into a different kind of an architecture. There's smart buildings that are happening. This is a mosque in Germany. And then Zaha's idea for a mosque that anything can go. She can do anything with a mosque, and that's the way we're going to have mosques. So this raises a bunch of questions which I think are really 21st century questions and point towards directions that we're going. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hassanuddin Khan, for this very interesting presentation. Actually, the new typology that you characterize it in a way or another opens a lot of doors for discussion, review, and of course, inspiration. Thank you. Now we have the lecture of our Professor Bernard O'Keefe. He's Professor of Art, Islamic Art and Architecture at the American University since 1980. He was also a visiting professor at Harvard University and at the University of California in Berkeley. He taught a lot, and he authored many books, many quite interesting books. Among them is the wonderful book on the Mosques of Cairo and the Mosque, as this is a recent one, the Mosque 100 most iconic houses, Islamic houses of worship. Please welcome Mr. O'Keefe, please.
So for those of you who are at the talk of Dr. Marafat this morning, there's not really much need for you to attend this presentation because he, in fact, has brought up all of the relevant issues. I do, however, have some different slides, so maybe that will be of interest. What I'm going to do, first of all, is to show you the spatial values that the greatest examples of Islamic architecture have. A good example for a hypostyle mosque is that of Ibn Tulun in Cairo. You can see from the plan it's a regular arrangement of piers in this case, and it opens up magnificent vistas in many directions through the arches. Similarly, the Great Mosque of Cordoba in Andalusia is built on a similar plan, the original plan on the right-hand side. But even in the reduced plan, if you like, with the cathedral inserted inside of it, there are still these magnificent vistas to be had throughout the building. Very different type of plan, as Dr. Hassanuddin showed us, is the 4 Iwan plan. But even there's one major space at the Qibla end of it, the dome chamber, which is very impressive in itself. Although the Iwan by itself, without a dome chamber, can also be the focal point of prayer, as in the Sultan Hassan Friday Mosque in Cairo, as you see here, built in fact supposedly to be bigger than the Taqi Kisra, the largest brick Iwan in Cairo, even though it wasn't, although Sultan Hassan thought it was. But even on a smaller scale, other elements of Islamic form can be extraordinarily impressive, such as the single dome chamber. Perhaps the finest example of it is in the Sheikh Lutfana Mosque in Isfahan. You can multiply the single dome chamber in various ways by having 9 examples of it, which is one of the most frequent plans in Islamic architecture, as in the Eski Jama in Edirne, west of Istanbul. Or, of course, as with the greatest achievements of the Ottomans, you can start with the single dome chamber and make it bigger and bigger, moving on from the Ut Sharafeli in Edirne to the Selimia in Edirne as well, which has really some of the most magnificent interior space. There are some balconies in this that you see, but these are not for women. These are for the use of the Sultan, and that's something that you see in one of the later great Ottoman mosques as well, the Blue Mosque or Sultan Ahmed Mosque in Istanbul. Looking back in the other direction, there is a balcony as well, but again, mistakenly, some people have thought that this was exclusively for women, but in fact it's for the use of the Sultan. This is the Friday Mosque in Yazd from the 14th century, another wonderful building. Again, here there are lots of upper galleries which have been suggested to have been for women, but in fact it's very likely that they weren't. We simply don't know, but as far as we know, women didn't occupy these spaces. In Cairo, there are a number of buildings from the Mamluk and Ottoman period that have a little wooden balcony that is on the side opposite the Qibla above the entrance. These two, as in the case of the Anasa Muhammad Mosque and the Citadel, have been suggested to be parts of women's mosques, but in fact, it's very unlikely they were for women, very unlikely they were for the Sultan, as there's just a narrow ladder that leads up to this space. Much more likely that it was the Dikat al-Mu'azzinin for the Aqam, or the call to prayer inside the mosque. So, what kind of arguments have come up with regard to the presence of women in the mosque? Dr. Marifat this morning mentioned this book by Marianne Katz, which is the most detailed study of the legal history of the jurists' views on this particular topic. And it seems fairly clear that the first practice in the Mosque of the Prophet was that women would pray in rows behind the men. The Hadith reports, they don't describe any particular distinct prayer space for women, but this laissez-faire attitude was replaced in later centuries by jurists' reasoning that placed greater restrictions on women's presence in mosques, encouraging them to pray at home and stipulating, for instance, that they shouldn't be young women, that they should obtain permission from their husbands, that they shouldn't wear perfume, and that they shouldn't crowd close to men. But despite these restrictions, the pre-modern sources seem to indicate that there still was a very frequent presence of women in mosques throughout the centuries. And her study shows that over the centuries, legal scholars' arguments have often reacted to, rather than dictated, Muslim women's behavior. So let's have a look at some of the solutions that have been found in relatively recent times. Now, I actually don't know when this started. It's something that needs some research. I have a feeling it started from the 1950s onwards, but it would be nice to have that confirmed by some research that still needs to be done. You can put up a curtain. That's one of the easiest ways to make a distinction. This is the wonderful Sanjak Lar Mosque, which we've seen before in this conference. And there's a magnificent view of the underground space looking in this direction. Looking in the other, the plan shows that there is a small women's space on the left-hand side. Don't think the pointer is working. No. Anyway, I confronted the architect with this miserable space for women yesterday. Fortunately, I was able to talk to him, and he told me that, well, in fact, this is what some of the women insisted on. They wanted to be able to pray privately without being seen. He also told me that it's still the custom for many of the women to pray in the main space in rows behind the men, and none of the men object to this. So this just illustrates how tricky a point it is when discussing this, because there are multiple viewpoints to be considered. And it's interesting, in fact, this was the photograph from Emery Aralat's original website showing the partition that was put up. But in fact, in more recent times, when I visited the building, there was a much stronger visual barrier between the two. So again, who is responsible for this? Was it the women who objected to being seen even behind a screen? That would be an interesting question to pursue. In regard to state mosques in particular, there is a tradition of certainly separating women, frequently, as we have seen in Dr. Hassanuddin's talk, in screens on a balcony behind the men. The women's prayer space is certainly much less impressive, and you can't really see the interior of the main prayer space so effectively from behind these partitions. So this idea of a balcony, it's present actually in both very large and much smaller examples of mosques, such as the Our Capita Mosque in Bahrain. So the upper portion of the building with the screen for the women is seen there. There's a better view of it, perhaps. One of the problems here is that the projection of this into the main prayer hall, yes, you can see actually the diagram showing the location of both the men's and the female spaces here. The projection into the prayer hall makes the space, even for the men in the mosque, seem a bit constricted, rather narrow, unfortunately. This is also one of the most exciting mosques of recent times, the Basuna Mosque by Walid Arafa. And it also is one that has a balcony space for women. The black area that you see on the left is actually the doors that lead separately to the upstairs women's mezzanine prayer area. And you can see the view on the right-hand side of the mihrab and the view from the mihrab on the left towards the women's balcony. It's a wonderful interior space, but from the women's space inside the mosque, you actually don't get the same sense of space, unfortunately. The Jummah Mosque in Doha as well is another one that has a very similar kind of arrangement, although in this case, the supports for the women's balcony are perhaps a little bit more intrusive. You can see there's almost a forest of columns down below. And if you're in this space, in fact, again, it seems relatively claustrophobic as far as the space for the men praying is concerned. So that too can be somewhat of a problem. Recent mosques in Turkey have concentrated on the dome, for instance, such as the Sakharin Mosque. And here, there's an unobstructed view from downstairs and a relatively unobstructed one as well from the women's balcony that is in the top of the building. But there's another, not exactly similar, but another variation based on the single mosque plan, the Yeşilvadi Mosque in Istanbul. And on the inside, you can see that there is another spacious balcony on top, but that seems to have been abandoned after the men decided, oh, that's too good for the women. Let's put them behind this wooden screen at the bottom right. When I visited the mosque, that's where the few women at the time were present were praying. The use of an upper balcony is frequent too in mosques in Malaysia. This is the Sembilan Mosque, and the upper balcony with its screen is seen extending as far as the mihrab. But again, there seems to have been a difference in practice, because when you look at the view from the other way around, there's now been a wooden partition erected on the ground floor. And this is where the technical group that assists in the Fawzan Mosque Award would need to advise me on how this has happened and who made the decision to move women perhaps from upstairs to downstairs. So I don't have this information, but it looks like a difference in usage. Another one of the most interesting mosques of recent times, we've seen this also in earlier presentations, the Ghadir Mosque in Tehran has this wonderful dome chamber space. However, what view do women have of this space? No, this isn't. Well, one of those little arched windows at the top, which is covered by a curtain, that's the space through which the women have to look at the building. And in fact, you can see from the plan of it that the women's balcony on the upper side doesn't really give you any view at all of the interior. And it also makes the view of the men down below much more restrictive as well. The same applies to another mosque that we've seen also in some of the presentations. It's one of the ones that's up for the Fawzan Award in this cycle, the Penzberg Mosque, just south of Munich. It's a wonderful building in many ways with fabulous elements of design. You can see the view of the full height of the mihrab on the right-hand side. But if you're inside the mosque, it's totally divided almost up until the space before the mihrab into two areas. And the view, even from the men's area below this towards the mihrab, is consequently a little bit claustrophobic again. This, the Vali Asr Mosque in Tehran as well, I've just been told very interestingly by my colleague, Dr. Hassanuddin, that Muslims, because it doesn't look like a mosque, have not been allowed to pray inside this because of the restrictions of the authorities in Iran. But the only view that I have of the prayer hall is this, which has an upstairs women's balcony. Again, it seems to have been something very close to the Penzberg Mosque in design, where the men underneath must be suffering from the lack of natural light and again from a sense of claustrophobia. In Cairo, this is the Imam Hassan Mosque dating from the second half of the 20th century. And the men have this very spacious prayer hall inside. Musalla Nisa, it's the basement. So a rather pokey, low-ceilinged affair, not very well lit in comparison to what the men have access to. Not terribly surprising. And with regard to balconies, there was a surprise for me after I visited the Fatah Mosque in Bahrain, which has balconies running all around it, which I naturally, maybe naturally for me, assumed that this was the women's area in the mosque. But in fact, when you look at the published plans of it, on the bottom right-hand side, you can see actually in pink the designation of the women's prayer space. Not nearly so architecturally inspiring as that available for the men. The Mohammed Mekkeya Mosque in Bahrain, the Sultan Qaboos Mosque, is another one that has a separate women's space, seen at the bottom left. The distinction between the two is emphasized, as in many other mosques, unfortunately, by completely separate entrances. We have the prayer hall entrance for the men. It's a magnificent space. The prayer hall entrance for the women, correspondingly narrow. The architect also designed the Great Mosque here in Kuwait, of course. It's a very large example, but here too you can see on the left of the main prayer hall is that of the women, much smaller in size. And even before its unfortunate recent makeover, which was disowned by the architect, it still was a magnificent interior space, but the screen that you see here at the back presents the women from within their prayer space of accessing this visually at all, unfortunately. This is one of the most magnificently decorated, although I must say not one of my favorite recent mosques. It too is one that has completely separate prayer spaces for women. The main prayer space for men that you see here, to me a little bit over-decorated, but certainly giving you a great sense of space, is very different from what the women have in their mosque. So what sort of discourses have we had recently? Well, this has been in at least 2 printings, so you can see it's a popular topic. And the topic is informed also by various other people in social media, such as Awaz. She's the creator of the very popular sitcom, The Little Mosque on the Prairie, and I urge you to have a look at this on YouTube. It's a very interesting and amusing set of arguments about the access of women in mosques. Of course, the background of this is as well is the place of women in Islamic society, and this is something that has been a very hot topic of debate over the last at least 100 years, if not a lot more, in fact. So again, there are many other pages on social networks that you can access which have been discussing this particular topic. Mariam Iskandari is one of the architects in an architectural cooperative called Meme Designs, and I remember her at a recent conference telling the audience how she insists when she's designing a mosque on having no gender separation within them. If there's pushback from the client, she reminds them that at the time of the Prophet in his mosque, there wasn't any such strict gender separation, as there still isn't today in the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca. One of the few scholars to discuss this in detail recently is Tammy Gaber, one of my compatriots from Egypt who teaches in the St. Laurentian University in Canada. Her corpus of Canadian mosques is called The Divide. She's not talking here just about the divide between Muslims and non-Muslims, but also she has a specific chapter on women and gender in the mosque and the problems and issues pertaining to this, which I also urge you to have a look at. And in fact, she has a very revealing series of plans of mosques in Canada in her book, which show you exactly what the relationship of the women's space in red is to the men's space in grey, varying from very minor in the great majority of the examples, but there are a couple of examples, one in Prince Edward Island, one in the Ismaili Centre in Toronto, that have a 50-50 split where they pray exactly equally. The corresponding survey of American mosques that has been published by Riyad K. Ali has an interesting table of contents. You can see I'll have to move away from the microphone a second so that I can read this too. The extra down below, women's prayer areas, it's sandwiched between the yard, the chandelier, the reception, and ceiling decoration. So rather insignificant in comparison to the other parts of the mosque. And he does devote a whole 2 pages of his book to illustrating these. So let me summarize by realizing that the role that the architect may have in designing spaces for women in the mosque, it's limited. There are other agencies, there are the community considered, there's the patron. And I also should mention that this can be different in, as Dr. Hassanuddin mentioned, communities that are minority Muslim, where the mosque, in fact, is much more likely to be a community center than it is in Muslim majority countries. But architects have to be part of the current discourse regarding women's place in mosques, even though they, or you, if you're an architect, may not have the final say on what space for women is allotted. You may be able to bring up at least the architectural and aesthetic consequences of partitioning of spaces. It may be possible for you to consider the consequences for mosque design if the breathtaking vistas such as this that previous generations of mosque architects have opened up for us were to be permanently curtailed. This would be a loss, arguably, not just for women, but for all humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Joaquin, for these challenging points that will raise definitely many discussions on that. Now we are in a good time, so we have 15 minutes of questions. Please. Who wants to raise a question, please come here so that... okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for the presentations. I have a comment / question about the second presentation. So I'm from Bahrain, and a lot of the community mosques that I've visited in Bahrain and I've prayed in. And when I say a lot, I'm not saying like 20-30% as a I'd say above 50% of the mosques I've visited in Bahrain. Usually the women pray in the main prayer space with a curtain in between. And I've noticed something very similar in most of mosques in Iran that I've visited as well. And so I wonder. So this observation brings me to the question. These differences, or because towards the end of your conversation, towards the end of your presentation, you're kind of alluding to that there's something missing in regards to the role of women in the Islamic world, let's say, or among Muslims as represented in mosques. So I wonder, is that regional? Is that, when we talk about the Muslims, it's a very homogeneous word, but really, it's not really homogeneous, is it? Or maybe it is. So my question is, do you see that relationship being different among different cultures within the Muslim world, or no, not really?
Can you hear me? Yes, I'm sure you're right. There are major differences. I must admit, because of language barriers partially, I'm more attuned to the English language complaints that have been raised by women about the space that is available for them in the mosque. But I think there are certainly some debates. I know these are by Muslim women, and they're frequently from different parts of the Muslim world who say are in America. And it's true that in different parts of the Islamic world, like I think mostly Pakistan and Bangladesh, it's not common at all for women to pray in mosques. So there obviously will be very different regional differences in the expectations and the ongoing debate about what space should be available for them. You're quite right.
Thank you. Professor Shah?
Thank you very much for the presentations. My question is Dr. Hassan. You showed us very interesting narrative of regionalism and its effect on mosque design, and ended up for a call for a universal approach for mosque. My question is that what do you think, or can we fit somehow Kenneth Frampton's theory of critical regionalism within mosque design, which goes beyond the architectural expressions and the vernacular limitation, technological limitation, to actually express the region in a more common way?
I mean, I guess my basic, is it working?
Yes, it's working.
My basic idea at the moment is that we are getting away from the regional. You know, the idea that there's regionalism in architecture, that's why I call it beyond what we're doing. And we're coming to some kind of an understanding of space and spirituality amongst designers that don't consider region, because we're now universal. We're now people who go nomads that travel the world. We go from one place to another very easily. So this notion that architecture is rooted in place, which is one that I grew up with, by the way. You know, architecture belongs to a place, belongs to the climate, belongs to a technology that existed. I think that's gone, and it's going. And the more that you look at buildings, even through the Al-Fawzan Award and maybe even the Arkan Award and others, that they are looking at buildings that are good architecture, and answer the needs of the local populations, but have nothing to do with the place. And technology allows us, because now we can move materials from one place to another. We're not stuck in a locale. So this is my sort of, I won't say it is actually semi-serious. It's just serious in the sense of saying, what are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to the Islamic world? What are we taking care of our populations? In this new, we've got no identity. It's like, you know, the argument about cities. All cities are going to have tall buildings, city centers. It doesn't matter where they are. It's so this idea of being it. I would just say one thing about women, by the way, which was kind of interesting, is that there's an example I showed, which is the one in Kingston in Canada. And the women are right in the middle, essentially. There's no balcony, they're on the same level as the men. But this was done because the mosque committee, in this case, had a lot of women. And they said, we're not going to be put into some place which is not us. So there are a few instances, it's the mosque committees that can make quite a difference to how a design of spaces is made. The other thing is, by law in Canada and other places, you can't separate you have to do it, you can get grants for community centers and not for a particular religious building. So this is why these new functions are coming into mosques as well. So it's kind of, it's an interesting moment. It's a moment in transition.
Actually, if I could just add something that I forgot to mention during my talk with regard to the Basuna Mosque. I wasn't that impressed with the women's space, but I had, fortunately, the ability to talk with the architect, Walid Arafa, who told me that the men in the village, this is a rather conservative small town in Upper Egypt, didn't want women in the mosque at all. And this was the solution that he came up with that would allow them to be there without anybody making any major objections.
Thank you. Engineer Ali.
Regarding women and prayers, I grew up in Mecca, and in the Haram, men and women encircle Kaaba without separation, and also during the prayer, there are only small places where women are separate from men, but the same space is actually shared by men and women. And in the event where, in Ramadan, sometimes they are almost abutting each other because they have no time to separate. Then we moved to Riyadh, and in Riyadh I haven't seen any woman coming to the mosque.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they, as Dr. Saleh Al-Hadri said, women to hear the khutbah of Friday, they go in the front and they hear the Imam recitation, and before the prayer they go home. They don't hold. And also in Saudi Arabia, women are not expected to hold prayer in Jama'ah. So the attendance of women to the mosque was a new phenomenon for me. So when we designed the Kendi Plaza, we suggested that we will have a mezzanine floor for the women. But in reality, women refused to go up. And they started in prayer in the open, shaded area. So in the last, say, 30 years, I see that more women coming for prayer, especially like during the day, they don't have any other place to hold their prayers, so they come to the mosque, but not necessarily to join men during the prayer time. I went to Cuba, and they have a mosque that's designed by the community and for the community. And I was amazed that actually they are parallel. There is one side for women and another side for men. So there is a changing attitude, and more women are actually coming to the mosque. It's a new phenomena, except for what the Holy Mosque. More women are coming for prayer, and they want to attend. The most common thing in Saudi Arabia now is in Ramadan for Taraweeh. And that's what we always try to design for women who come for Taraweeh. So it is a changing culture, and we are learning how to deal with that. I no longer separate men from women, but rather to create.
Thank you for these observations. Maybe I could just add that this is a kind of chicken and egg problem. If women don't feel welcome in the mosque, they won't come. And if they don't have attractive spaces provided for them, that makes them less likely to come. But if you design more attractive spaces, then I'm sure women's attendance is more likely to increase.
So, last question, please. Just to announce that in 5 minutes, 2 parallel sessions will start in Hall A, in this floor, and the ground floor, and in Hall P upstairs. So we still have 5 minutes to.
Right. I'm Yasser Mujahid from Cardiff University, and I was lucky to kind of have the shared kind of interest about mosque praying space in my presentation today. And my question to Professor O'Kane is mainly about the sources, because in my kind of research, I struggled a lot to find actual resources about women praying space in history. And there are a lot of personal observation using anecdotal kind of evidence more than well-researched one. And I want to know your experience about that as well in this challenging and not commonly kind of topic that we are talking about. And thank you.
You're quite right. The number of sources is very limited, specifically on medieval sources for this. But I think, in fact, that the book that we both used and both quoted, Marianne Katz's Women in Mosques, has done the best job of getting all the available information that is present, both from the jurists' discussions and debates about this matter, but also from incidental observations and other texts which tell us that women actually did visit the mosques despite the jurists' observations. But I'm sure more can be done, so this is work for future scholars. Thank you.
Thank you. One last, please.
So maybe ask for advice. I'm an architecture professor. I teach at the Department of Architecture at Kuwait University, and almost every studio project I teach, I have to have my students design a mosque. So now when I'm listening to your lecture and I'm looking at these examples, I see two different attitudes towards mosque designs. I mean, there's this Western kind of attitude and different kind of situations or circumstances. Like, for example, in this case where you say in Canada, where they have to have it as a mixed-use development with a lot of programs to serve the community, and that's how they can get funding from the government to build these mosques. Whereas, for example, in Kuwait, this is not an issue because we have mosques in every neighborhood and every more than one mosque. So as educators, what would you advise us as professors when we're teaching? Should we teach the kind of architecture of mosques that are being developed in countries like Australia, Germany, and Canada? Or do we keep doing what we're doing in our part of the world where we don't need to deal with those kind of issues that, you know, probably mosques in the West have to tackle and have to respond to? And thank you.
I think Professor O'Kane sort of suggested something which is really, it's the local population who are going to decide which way mosques should be designed or could be used. It isn't, you know, the West, I believe, there'll be Muslims in the West who will bring about a lot of the changes. But for us, it depends on what the traditions are locally and what women themselves are going to ask for. So if you do a design studio, and I've done a few on mosques too, or I've done them on Islamic centers more than just a mosque, and much wider, because they bring up other issues to do with male and female, with gender equality, with all sorts of other things. And in some cases, from when I'm in Pakistan, it has to do with tribal cultures. So the question is, you know, who are you? I'm not suggesting one should look towards the West all the time for your designs, but you need to ask yourselves and students and others to critically look at what is being designed and what they might desire to have done. And it's not, as I said, it's a moment of transition for all kinds of things, for technology, for social norms, for what gets included and in place. So, you know, whether it's Kuwait or Pakistan or Canada for that matter, it really depends on what the population begins to want. And I think it's going to be women who are going to make the change. It's not men. We're too complacent. We don't, you know, we like the status quo, we like the power. We're not going to make any changes unless we're asked, unless we're forced to in some ways. I don't know if that answers your concerns or question.
Thank you so much at the end. Thank you, Professor Hassanuddin Khan and Professor Bernard O'Kane. Thank you all for attendance and participation. We'll start immediately with a panel sessions in Hall A and Hall B. So please join us.